So this is the 2025 Vault release with Sizzix. It is 5 SKUs. There's actually some embossing folders that will be coming out later in the month, but this is the release that is available now. It is already shipped to retailers, so many of the retailers across the globe have stock to sell today, or they have stuff on order, but this release again is available now. I'm going to go through and talk about the SKUs, each one design-wise, and also share some ideas that I had with each one. Now this live is a little different than lives that you may have seen before when I did a Sizzix release, because this time the makes associated to this live are handled by Sizzix directly. So Sizzix reached out to many of the former makers for Tim Holtz, and they made stuff for Sizzix, and Pete from Sizzix will be sharing the makes on Sizzix YouTube channel the 31st of March. But not to worry, if you're really kind of wanting inspiration following this live, I will be posting the makes on my blog on timholtz.com, so you can see little thumbnails of all the makes, and of course Pete is going to do a thorough, wonderful video on the 31st sharing that. But I do have some ideas and some demos on how to work with these as well. So first thing to understand about the Vault collection is that the Vault collection was really the opportunity to go through previous release collections that I've done with Sizzix over the last 16 years and kind of reimagine them. Some of them we just changed some scale, some of them we changed technology, and technology means like maybe it was a Biggs die and now of course we turned it into a Thinlit. And I worked with the wonderful Jen Long at Sizzix, so a shout out to Jen, who really worked with me to kind of create these beautiful SKUs. We bring these SKUs at a great value. I mean, it's still that same value that it was when we launched the Vault collection last year. So as you guys know, we really packed a lot. And I think in this one, I would have to say it's probably my favorite of all the Vault releases, because we really had a groove going and we packed a lot of stuff into each SKU. So I'm going to take it one by one, talk about it, and again, talk about the inspiration of what the original SKU it came from, and also show comparison. So this first one, this is a side order. Now side order just means that these dies are sized to fit the Sizzix Sidekick. They're small, and they also come with an embossing folder that fits the Sidekick. What's really nice about this release is it is perfect for springtime, Mother's Day, but also it just has a great floral vibe. One of my favorite floral SKUs, which was called Floristry, and it just has a nice like modern aesthetic to it, I think. This is the embossing folder. This was kind of old school. It's just kind of a fractured honeycomb. So these little breaks in here, that's all by design. So I do like that. I think it works really well with this collection. So we'll talk about the dies that it was inspired by. This was the original die. This was called Floristry. And these are kind of just a big modern bloom, if you will. It had some great elements. Now, not all of these elements are on the Vault. That's the thing you have to understand about Vault. It's not like we just took this and changed the size. We took components that I felt worked the best, and we did components from other SKUs as well. So as far as scale comparison, just so you guys can see, if you have this original Floristry, you can see that the Vault SKUs are much smaller for this release. And that's really, really important to understand if you are going to make a purchase of this. Like, first of all, do you even use this set? Do you like it? Or do you like the idea of having a smaller scale? And what's nice about flowers, and I'll show you that in the demo, is the fact that because we have a smaller floral of the same design, you can layer these and you can build bigger blooms or blossoms. So I like that. We did that for really all of the main florals in Floristry, and we made them small. And I love the fact that we were still able to keep a lot of the detail, because you can see some of these areas are really small. And Jen, of course, does her great job kind of creating that perfect balance of making it manufacturable for the design, but also that it cuts easily. Now, some of the greens in here, because we wanted to add some greens, some different leaves and some stems, these came from these sets. These were the brushstroke sets. So brushstroke, I think 1, 2, and 3, I believe so. Don't quote me on that, but these are different brushstroke florals. And you can see that we just I liked this piece. So we did this piece, we did this a different size. I like this little leafy thing here. And I liked these leaves here and this little, I don't know, twig, bush, branch thing. So what's really something important to understand is that when it comes to scale, we always want to give a difference, but sometimes, and I'll talk about this piece, that little weird branchy thing, sometimes when we reduce stuff, We do have to compromise a little bit of the design aesthetic, but I don't think that that's a terrible thing. So when we brought it down into that smaller vault, we did have to get rid of these original cuts, but you might like that. You might say, oh, cool, I like the fact that this is more of a silhouette. Same thing with the leaves. The larger leaf had that little cutout opening. The smaller one doesn't. But what's important to note is that you can still use these together. So if you get the shiny new toy, don't forget what's in the toy box, because using them together is going to give you more creative options. Maybe you did have some of these die sets, because these are, I mean, look at that. They're massive size flowers, and maybe you've looked at these and struggled with, like, how do I put such a big blossom on a card? Well, the nice thing is now you have smaller pieces to work with. So those are the size comparisons for the side order. I do love that, of that Floristry. A lot of stuff packed in. I think it's really fun. And this is just a little embossing folder, just so you get it. I mean, it's nothing fancy, but it works great in a Sidekick. It works in other machines too. So, you know, when we talk about the Sidekick, don't think, oh, I can only cut it with that. No, it just means that it's small enough that it will work with that machine if you have something small. So I do love it. I see a lot of chatter. I get very excited when it comes to bringing stuff back. It makes me very excited. Okay, let's see. What am I going to do with this? I think I'm going to hand some stuff to Mario. You know, Mario, I probably will need stuff back at a later time. Whatever. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks. So I might be doing a shout out of like, hey, can you bring that? Sure. Thanks. Okay, let's talk about the next one. This one, very excited because we went old school for this one. It's always interesting when I think about technology and how things have really progressed in the die cut world, because when I first started with Sizzix, I wasn't designing thin dies. I was only designing big steel rule dies. So this particular one, this is a vault. This is called Edges, and I'll get into all of the different things of what it does and really what these dies do, because sometimes you look at the package and you're like, I don't really get what I'm buying here. So hopefully this will explain it a little bit more. But we'll talk about the alphabet first. This was an alphabet, believe it or not, this is a Biggs XL. So this is the die that it was inspired by. This is Block Talk lowercase. So imagine, look at these dies. I love this because, you know, if you have Biggs dies, you can cut things like chipboard and stuff like that to get your own chipboard alpha. But this was the font that inspired Shadowpress. So I know in Valentine's Day I showed those little Shadowpress folders, but this is that great font. There's something about certain fonts that I really resonate with, that I really love. And for this one, I wanted to bring it back because it does have, from a design aesthetic, some of my favorite characteristics of an alphabet. You may not care, but I'm going to share it with you because that's what this is all about. I love certain things that have has a little bit of a serif, but very clean. It still has a nice modern vibe. I love those little A's that have a different scale, right? So you've got the different widths in there. And I always love that little hook G, the little eyeglass G. I love that. I also love when you have certain letters like M's, N, H, even the B's and D's, where you just have that, I don't know the technical term, but I love that area is a little bit higher than the midline that you typically see it with. And I also love when the P's and Q's have the little shorty that are different than these. So there's just certain aesthetics where I look at a font like that little T where it's not even, and it just resonates with me. So that's really what it is. Can be ordered in the UK. These are available worldwide. So wherever you live, if you have a retailer that sells Sizzix, they should have stock. If they don't, they just chose not to get this release for whatever reason, but this is definitely available worldwide. So some of the things to know in addition to the alphabet is what we build on. Now keep in mind, this is only the alphabet, it's not the numbers, because this is just, we wanted to pack in as much as we could. But this right here is where the magic is. And this is something that Jen and I, when we were working on this, I was telling Mario as well, we really struggled to kind of get the art right because we were trying to figure it out. So these are edge dies, and these were inspired by these. I did a whole series with Sizzix years ago. They were called On the Edge. And the idea was just creating a die that cut an edge. It didn't have an end blade, so it doesn't really cut a shape, like a floating shape. It just has an edge. And these were always favorites, and they were a bit tricky. I mean, you can see even on here when I was using it, like I often had to draw on my die to kind of see where the cut is, because if you look at a steel rule die, sometimes you can see where the blade is, sometimes you can't. So yeah, I often took a white pen to kind of give myself registration marks. But these were designed that you could put in an element and cut a decorative edge, kind of like decorative edge scissors, but doing it with a die. So reimagining this, I wanted to not only create a different scale than what these were, because that's another thing we like to do with the Vault, but also simplify like how it works. Yeah. Yeah, Jim was like, we did mess this up. It was just hard. It was hard to kind of figure it out, but we got it. So the cool thing about these edge dies is that we were able to make them really, really thin. And I'm going to demo these also during this live so you can see just how easy they are. But we kind of had to flip the art so you can use them easier than how these were. Like, you don't have to worry about like, where is this edge going to be? We've simplified it where you can place this down, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to be super successful with these edge dies. But again, they have just a blade on the edge. They don't have a blade all the way around. So you have the ability to keep the paper whatever width you want to keep it when you're working with these. So I'm going to bring in just the scale and kind of show you the difference on those. Let me hand this off to you, Mario, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So first we'll talk about the alphabet. So this was, of course, the Big's XL size of that alpha, and this is the Vault. So you can see it is a much smaller scale. So if you have this original, it is really nice that we have the different scale of that alpha. It's just such a classic. It's so good. But then here's all the difference when it comes to what we did with the Vault dies between the scale of the steel rule die and, of course, the thin die. That's really, really important. Okay, so here you can see on the edge, that's going to be that larger scale, and this is what we were able to do with Vault. Same little quirky detail. I love this torn notebook edge. It's just one of my favorites. Just a cool aesthetic, but see, it's all wonky. That was all by design, because the original ones I did with EL, like, we really had our wonky on. We were doing crazy things with steel rule dies to not make them symmetrical or anything, and we really wanted to kind of celebrate that. So Jen used that art and kind of created a repeat because we wanted to do a smaller scale. So that's the Vault edge of the notebook. Then this is kind of a torn page or decal. So if you have a decal trimmer, this of course inspired that as well, but this is a die. Now this one, I didn't really want to change much of it because all of these little imperfections, it was a great scale. So this one we just said, hey, you know what? We're not gonna change it if it's already perfect. So that's why we did that torn edge for the Vault Thinlit, which I think is really, really, really neat. Mario's pointing out which size. Well, that's the difference in scale. If you want to know the size of the new, that is 1 inch. So the B is 1 inch. There you go. Thanks, Mario. So here's the postage. That's really a cool edge. But this one had definitely more of a, I'll just say like a chewed one, meaning I call it the notch postage, where it's like very straight and very notched. And when we changed the scale, I just said to Jen, I'm like, can we just make it like a little bit more rounded so it gives you much more of a postage stamp aesthetic? So you can see that that's exactly what we did. We didn't go full round in the notch. We modified it. And that's the great thing about the Vault as well. We can take that original art and say, okay, that's really cool. Let's modify it. Let's change it just a little bit. So that's good. Here is Pinked and Scallop. And again, really great designs. We didn't alter it much, just a little bit, because this was steel. So this one definitely had to have that ziggity zaggity. When we did the Vault, we rounded it just a little bit, so it wasn't so sharp, but you can see it's slightly smaller scale. And then same thing on the scallops. The scallops are wonky. They're not this perfect line. So yes, some stick up taller, some are a little shorter. So we just wanted to make them a little bit smaller, just so you had just a difference in those two. And it's great because all of these edges and the alphabet are in that one Vault set. Crazy. The value, just unbelievable. So I do love that. Okay, let me put this off to the side. It's fun to kind of see the difference, right? I think that's important. And like I said, I'll demo the edges so you'll get a better understanding of kind of how this all works. There you go. Thanks, Mario.
Sure.
Let me hand you that too.
This?
Yep, thank you.
Got
Got
it?
it? Okay. So next one for the steampunk lovers, because you know I do love a good steampunk, and I would have to say that, and sad to say, in the Sizzix world, in my career with Sizzix, these were the first designs to usually retire. And it's not that, I mean, I know that there's steampunk lovers, but I think sometimes people look at certain art and they're like, I would never use that. And hopefully in today's live, you might see beyond just maybe what you look at for packaging. So when I had the opportunity to bring back Vault, this was the one that, I mean, Jen had so much patience. You can already tell just from looking at this how many dies and components are on here because I just kept adding. We worked from a template, and whenever there was space, I'm like, okay, go. I agree, Zoe. Grunge lovers unite. I was like, okay, there's like this much space. Can we add this and can we add this? So really, Jen, like, thank you, because we packed it in. So we're going to talk about all the different original dies that we incorporated into this one set, which is, it's amazing. And I know it's favorites for a lot of people, okay? So let's see, where do I want to start? I think I'll start with these bigger ones down here. It'll make it easier for me. So we'll talk about the gears. So the gears for this one came from a Biggs L die called Industrial. Now, one thing to point out is that, you know, you might have a retailer that still has some of these original dies in stock. So when I talk about them being retired, it just means that it's retired from Sizzix, but that doesn't mean that there are retailers out there that might have stock. And I always say, like, if you're a fan of steel rule dies, because we haven't made them for years, if you find one that you like, pick it up, because, you know, if you try to find it on eBay or something, they go crazy pricing. So what we did here is we took a lot of these big elements and we reduced them onto thinlits, so you can see the difference in scale. These are the gears that cut from this Biggs L, and we took those same designs. I like the ones that have just, like, you know, little skinny teeth on there, and we reduced that into that particular one. Nice, huh? See, I love the detail of it. But we did a smaller version of that particular die. I'm gonna have to move some of this stuff out. This is way old school. These are movers and shapers. So this is a stencil number. This was really fun. These are magnetic dies that you could put in other dies. This was a mover and shaper collection. And I always love this cargo stencil number. It is, again, one of my favorites, because you could take a piece of chipboard, place this down, and actually cut through the chipboard. But what you have to understand about this is that it is a stencil die. Okay, so the idea is that you keep the negative, but it doesn't mean you can't use the positive. You can. Just my suggestion is, if you're going to cut it out, cut yourself one of these first. Like, cut yourself a stencil. That's what I did for packaging. And then when you go to glue these pieces in, actually lay that template down on your card, take these little cutout pieces, put adhesive on the back, and then press them like a puzzle into those areas, and then lift the stencil off. This way you'll get perfect placement if you want to use the positive of a stencil. Does that make sense? Because the idea is that it's a cargo stencil, so you can use it either way, but I always have one template that I've just cut that I reuse again and again if I ever want to glue the positive number on there. So it's great, because you can do this for birthdays. You can do a whole background of it, because instead of these being these you know, steel rule mover and shapers, they're really, really tiny independent dies. So this is not one die. These are all individual numbers in here. Let me see if I can get one of these out of the bag. Let's see what, number one is going to come out. There you go. It's just one die. So again, if you wanted to do, you know, 25 on repeat, you could just cut the 2 and the 5, run it through 2 and the 5, all of those things that when you're creating, you have options. So I really was excited to bring that one back, because I do love the numbers, and more importantly, I love the stencil. But just so you get it, when you lay it down, you're like, okay, what do I do with these paper fragments? Well, you can use them that way or embrace that way. Okay? All right. Okay. No, not yet. Thanks. So there's the scale difference. I know that I showed you the dies, but you can see it is significantly smaller, but I love the idea. So that just gives you a better visual of how I got the spacing just right. Obviously, I placed those dies, I cut it out, but then before I stuck this piece down, I placed it down and I put a little adhesive on the back of these pieces, stuck them into the openings, and then lifted off the top of the cardstock, and there you have it. Perfect placement. Okay? Okay. Now we get into the good stuff. Here we go. Let's talk about each of these elements. So I think the first one we'll talk, I mean, because there's so many good things, really. There's so many things that, I mean, I don't want to say everything's my favorite, but this was the one that is like, if I'm going to design a steampunk vault, I am going to put in all my favorites. So one of them was a light bulb, and this was a Biggs, it was called Filament. This is just a Biggs die. But take a look at the scale difference, because this cut out, really, this was one honking light bulb. I would have to say now, looking back, I would be like, what in the heck would anyone ever use a ginormous light bulb for something? I don't know, but hey, if you have this die, I'm sure it would be cool, like on a canvas or in a journal or something. But I love the fact that because we went with a thinlet, we were able to really reduce that scale and keep the great aesthetic. I've got a demo for this one too that's really fun, because never underestimate the power of a good Edison bulb design. So this one has the bulb, it's got obviously the base, and it's got the two-piece filament in there that are separate that you have. You can do some really great stuff, but scale-wise, yeah, very, very different scale, much, much smaller. Then we have another one. This is called Voltage, and this really inspired a lot of different things. I know Vicki Evans always did such crazy things with this, and this inspired even some things in ideology where we did, you know, gauge layers, and we even did frames, just inspired by this particular die. This one cuts this whole little design, but what's great about this design that you can keep in mind is that you can use so many different elements from this, so you don't always have to build this thing. I'll kind of just explain a little bit. So this die has many components. It's got the square base. Now the square base has a crease rule in that die that shows you where this circle goes. But then you have this circle die. That's all I cut out just to show you. Then you have this little arch piece, and that arch could be a window that goes in here, but you can use the arch for other things. Obviously there's that little needle pointer, so there again, you can use the needle pointer for other things. It doesn't have to be on top of this. And then it's got these little hardware pieces, and the hardware, let me see if I can, let me just grab the die just to show you these elements, like what I was talking about. So this is the die that cuts that square, but right here, this is not, there's no blade on the inside, so it's just going to deboss that circle so you know where to actually layer that if you wanted to line it up perfect. But I was going to talk about the hardware, because there's a couple of hardware pieces. I'm just going to dump them. Oh, here's one. Perfect. There's a couple of these. So the hardware dies, this is what they look like. They're kind of strange, but what we wanted to do is, depending on what you were cutting out, like I'll talk about this little porthole, everything that you needed for this shape is on one die. So this is the hardware for this circular piece. It's got these round pieces and these little hex that you stack to kind of create rivets, and I'll show you what I mean when I hold this up. You see those right there? Believe it or not, it's there. That one's offset. There's a little circle and a little hex. So the 6 you need for this piece are on one die, and the 4 bigger ones are on another die. So this way you just get to cut them all out in one pass, where on, you know, on the previous die like this, you would have to just line this up and run it through again and again and again and again to get enough hardware to put the piece. So we use that as an opportunity as well to say, hey, cool, let's put all the hardware we can on one die depending on what you're cutting out. Okay, perfect. Next up, we will talk about this little kind of porthole thing, and I just did quick scale. I wasn't going to cut out all the hardware, but this one came from Steampunk Parts, and it has this circle. It's got a little ring. It also had a little propeller fan blade, and there's your hardware again that you had to repeat cut to get this out. But the idea is that you've got this circle, and then you have this tiny little ring that you can cut and stack. And then of course you can place down your hardware. But there you go, the light's picking it up. We actually put crease rule in the new vault so you can see exactly where these go to space them perfectly. We didn't have that technology for Bigs. Bigs, like, you get what you get, you don't throw a fit. You just, you know, you kind of try to do your best spacing out. But on this die, when you cut out this ring, so those openings right there, they don't cut the circle. They just deboss that ring, so it just gives you a better perspective as to where you want to place it. Not that you have to. You do what you want. You may not want to, maybe you don't want to fuss with all these little paper things. Okay, don't. Go in your ideology. Use screw heads and glue those, but now you know where those go. Or use brads, you know. Use a little texture hammer. But I like the idea that just that little thought that we did in the die is going to give you perfect placement when it comes to adding the hardware. It's all about the detail. I am a maker. So it is important that how am I going to make this, and you know what's going to make it easy when I make for the next one. Okay, then we have one that I would say is probably one of the most requested vault dies from steampunk lovers, which was this one. This is called Pipeline, and it was just a bunch of parts and pieces, different pipes, a little wheel, there was a faucet. It was a wild die that you either got it and you liked it, or you really didn't like it and you didn't get it. But I wanted to bring this back, and I love how much smaller we were able to do this and still keep all of the great detail. So these pieces, you can build whatever kind of pipeline you want. It makes for a great background. Or you can just do the faucet for spring. So you can still just do like the little garden faucet and you can have drips coming out. So it doesn't have to be steampunky at all if you don't want it to be. But I like that all of these pieces will connect. Also in here, it's got these little connection points on this, and I want to point that out on this die. There's also a die in the vault that cuts out a bunch of these little bars, and you might be like, what is that for? That's what it's for. It's that when you connect these pieces, you can add that second paper layer to really give it that dimensional ring, if you will. There's also a little die for the wheel, the top of that little faucet. We just wanted to put in a lot more details that we couldn't do initially in steel rule because of the scale of it. So yeah, all of these pieces in one die set. You see what I mean? Like, this is the one. This is the one that's like, if you like any of these components, and again, if you stick around for the demo, you might get some other ideas of what you can use this set for. So I do love it. It's a lot of good stuff. Okay, let me get rid of all. I think it's important to show scale. I know we do a lot of die cutting, we do a lot of pieces, but it is important just to always show scale. All right, move these out of the way. Hand that off to Mario. Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me scoop these back in. I was going to have all these like set up on my magnet sheets and everything, but of course, because I was just playing around, I couldn't put it away. So I was like, I'm not going to put it away. I'm just going to keep using it. All right, let me put some of this stuff off to the side. I'm getting a better organization now that I've cleared some of the place on my table. Let me hand that to you, Mario. Thanks. Okay. All right. Got a couple more from the vault. This one, well, this one's just fun. This is Atomic Retro for Vault, and it just has this, again, a classic one. I mean, to me, this whole atomic vibe retro never goes out of style, which I really, really love. And also what's important is, you know, it kind of resonates with that old school TV. It really does. So this one has fun colors and fun ideas, and it was really inspired by two SKUs. There was two other designs that just really packed a punch. This was the thinlits that we initially did of all these atomic shapes, and we added a couple of new ones because there were things that we wanted to, you know, we had space on the die, so we added a lot of other things that I think was really good. Will Atomic Retro work in the Sidekick? If it's small enough, which it is, if the die is smaller than 2.5 inches wide, it's going to work in there. Probably not the television, but these other elements will. You might be able to get the TV maybe if you angle it, but I'm not sure. But that's the whole thing. Will it work in the Sidekick? If the die is small enough to fit within the width of that cutting pad for the Sidekick, it will cut with the Sidekick. But these, I mean, these were big. These were massive. So, I mean, some of these smaller ones would work, but certainly not these larger ones. No way. But I love the scale that we were able to go. And again, a shout out to Jen, because you can see on these older ones, they were very thin. So we were already kind of pushing spec on these thinner widths of the original version. And so shrinking it down, you know, she still had to kind of go in and almost redraw it to say, okay, we want to make it smaller, but we can't really change the width of this because it wouldn't cut and it wouldn't come out of the die. So thanks, Jen, for reworking this art to get it perfect, because even these like little sparkles and these cool little bursts, I mean, there's so many elements. I didn't even cut all of them out. They're all here. These are all the things you get, the different sparkles, the different bursts. I love these great shapes because you actually get the positive and negative from this. So you can use like the leftovers from this star as another piece, but they're really fun. This could even be like, this was the shape that inspired that sign for Colorized Road Trip, you know, that wonky kind of camping sign. It was inspired by a shape like that. So really utilizing these pieces, you can use them for so many different ways. And if you just Google that atomic, you'll get a lot of ideas of how that worked. This was another one. This was a Biggs though. This was Retro TV. Just a nice, fun television set. And it was popular, but it didn't have a long life. And the makers, I mean, I remember like Zoe Hillman did like a Hitchcock vibe where she had like birds flying out of the screen, because there was Sizzix has a dome that fits this one that actually created a big screen. There's no dome for this smaller one, but it was a fun design. And I thought, hey, I'd love to have like a little TV. I bought a Christmas ornament from Disney of like an old retro TV, and it was small, and there was just something about the scale of it that made it cute. I mean, because really, when you see it, it's just cute, small. This was the Biggs, And so we just took this and like, okay, this is really cute. But with everything else, because we were able to shrink it, then we just went, I mean, gosh, Jen and I went crazy as far as all the silly little things we can add to this. So you'll see from a shape, we added this little bump right here because it's all the accessories that you could put on this television. We went crazy on that. We couldn't do on the bigs. So we created like a separate little antenna piece with that little bubble dome. We added, I think, 2 additional layers of the television. So you've got the television, then you've got this gray piece with the cutout that you can embed like another strip for like a little speaker. Then another frame that was squared, but it also has that rounded rectangle inside. We were able to add to the controls. So this cuts pieces out, these add pieces, and then we did a little highlight there. We add the feet. I mean, it's cool. There's a fun idea that I'm going to share for this one too. So I love this set. It's so old school, but man, there's great elements that just make me happy. All right, moving on for this. Give you this, Mario. Thank you very much. And we got one more of the vaults, and well, you saved the best for last because I love this set. If you remember a release, and it's funny because we just called the release like Chapter 3, and I think that was in 2023. But we did this release of all these different components that were like file folders and slide frames and little envelopes, and there were just these great elements that, and many of those are still available, but it was like there were so many different elements that were missed because there just wasn't enough space to do it. So when we talked about doing the vault, it's like, okay, I want to bring back some of my favorites, but I actually want to add some new things that never made that chapter release, if you will. Okay, this is my favorite. Okay, here's Vault Noteworthy, and it has some really great elements. It's got a file folder. I'm going to talk about scale. It's got this wonderful little functioning mini clipboard. So yes, the clipboard is actually functioning. I'm going to demo that, like how to build it and how to create it. It has a little foldable file tab. It's got labels. It's got small, that's actually a postage stamp. It's got the tiniest little postage edge. It's got a globe. This came from an original side order. It's got a little paper clip, label frames, the little reinforcer tie where you can put that on an envelope or anything that you want as a closure. And then these, which is actually little strips of torn tape as a die. I love it. So let's talk about inspiration and scale. Well, as I mentioned, it was inspired. This is what I refer to as Chapter 3, which is collector, specimen, and postal. And these dies just, I mean, there's so many different elements in these. This was just a collection that I think when it came out, it just rocked. It's so many cool pieces that you can use for more things than you can ever imagine, okay? That to me is what's really important to remember. But it's also led me to things that as we were working on it, it's like, oh, well, I wish we did this or wish we did this. And that to me was the most important thing. So we'll start with the folder. So the folder, this was the folder that we actually did in the original. And this is the size of the new folder. It is a tiny, tiny little folder. It is smaller than even the ones in Ideology. And I'll talk about this because I'm going to demo the folder. But it's a really great scale for junk journals or all sorts of different things. And this one also holds a gift card. So if you were just wanting to put a gift card in something and maybe you didn't want an envelope or a pocket or to make a card, you can decorate a little folder. You can even seal the edges and a gift card goes in there. So it's a wonderful shape. Then we talk about labels. I can never have enough labels. And you know from Ideology, Paul and I, we just love little labels. This label is actually the smallest in all of these when we're working. We're not talking tags. We're talking these label pieces from a rectangular shape. So I just wanted to do a few smaller ones. So we included these smaller labels. We also did some smaller labels in rectangles and circles that were also inspired by this. Then there's this little fold over tab. So this is just a file tab that has a crease rule that you can fold around a page to create a tab. That's the vault size. So again, if you have both, you can see that if you're doing a junk journal, some might have a standard tab and some you might want like a tiny tab to pull things out of pockets. So I think that it's really great that you have that small scale. And then when we talk about this little label frame, you also have options because you've got the solid and you have the frame. So if you cut both, you can stack them. But sometimes you might just want to cut just the frame and put it over maybe a stamped word. Or sometimes you might just want the solid to actually stamp a word on. So you don't always have to use them together. That's why they're two separate dies. But you can see it is a much smaller size than what came, I think it was on, yeah, it was on this one as well as on collector. So nice, nice. This was, yeah, no, this is specimen. Okay, so some other little trinkety bits. We'll get into those little elements. This one, by the way, I just want to call this one out. Let's see, let's find, this is from collector. Okay, because this had the little coin collector envelope. It has this, I don't know what the proper name is. I'm sure someone's going to school me on it in just a minute. But it's that thing that you put on and you do the little string. Okay, this got used a lot, especially in junk journals when you want to have a little closure and tie a little string. So I didn't want to change it, but I wanted to include it because I felt like maybe you didn't have these and this was going to be your set. And I didn't want you to miss out on something cool. But what we decided to do a little different is give it a little detail. So if you look at the difference between the one that came in collector and the one that comes in the new vault, we put in those 2 rings of crease rule. So see how it just kind of gives it a little bit more dimension? Isn't that cool? So now when you cut it out, it's going to deboss those rings. So if you inked the die, it would ink those colors, or if you inked over it, it's just going to give it more shape and dimension for that closure. So you can see here, see those little raised things? I think that's great. A policy closure. Okay, but a thingy. It's just that little loopity bit. I just call it like a little zippity doo, because you're like a little zippity doo with a little twirly gig. It's a zippity doo with a twirly gig dismount. That's kind of how you're doing that. Okay, so here's some other ones, and we're going way back because we are. Oh, here's a little postage stamp comparison, just so you guys see. When I said it was tiny, way smaller than that, and there is a little edge. It's just tiny. And I also like the little arrow because the arrow was in this one. It was in Postal. See that little cutout arrow? Because here you get, what's nice is you will get like the little positive and negative, but see, you'll get a smaller one. And I know makers just use this because it's really great that you can place and position this and do all sorts of things with that. Okay, so let's talk about these. These just came from some old school side orders. So one was a travel one, side order that we did years ago with the plane and all that. That was the globe. There is just a small little globe that we put in vault. And then that is a paper clip. That came from Noted. This was a whole little die set where you got to cut out all these different shaped paper clips. So paper clips from paper, because they cut the shape, but then they actually cut out a channel. So not just a cut blade, but actually a channel that you can cut out of paper and use it as a decorative paper clip. So we included one in vault, but it's smaller. So if you have this set, it's much smaller. But again, these are fun that you can cut out of different cardstocks or different metallic cardstocks. You can ink them, you can grunge them, and just add them to a journal or even a card. Just a little tag, because you can still stamp a number, put a little sticker on there. So we included that as well. Gosh, so much stuff in here. And then the clipboard. But the clipboard was really inspired by a die that I did. This was a mover and shaper die that actually cut a functioning clipboard. And this was, I remember when we did it, it was kind of mind-boggling for people because we actually did a blade and then we stopped the blade and started the blade. You can see it on the back. So we created these little breaks where when you cut this, it only cut the lines in the paper, and then you had this bottom piece that again only had 3 blades, so you could position this on your card. These are old school. You'd cut it out, and then this opening would allow you to put paper underneath. This little opening would allow you to tuck that in. And it really was like the catalyst of saying, hey, well, let's take that design, but actually build a clipboard around it. So I'm going to demo how this builds and goes together as well, but it is functioning. So you've got a baseboard that actually has a little cut line that's rounded in there, and then it will hold on to things that you put on there. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to just talk about all of the things. So yeah, that is Vault Noteworthy. It packs it in. It's some great stuff. Let me hand all this stuff to Mario. Thanks, Mario.
You're welcome.
You're weird today. There you go.
That's my fault.
Okay. All right. Let's take that, put that over here, and I'll hand these off to you as well. There you go. Thanks. All right. Let's get out I'm gonna get out just my glass mat, just so I've got a place to work and square it up so you're not
There you go.
There we go. Not too bad. Not too bad on the placement. Just to kind of give me some places, and we'll talk about some stuff. So the first thing we'll talk about, we'll just kind of go a little basic, because we're just going to give you a basic reminder on florals and shaping, which I think is really good. I'll talk about all that stuff about notebook paper, all that stuff when we get there. It's going to be good fun. Okay, so when it comes to florals, and I'll ask Mario just to throw a link up, because I did a video on this a long time ago. This is just called the shaping kit, and you might have something like this, but it's just sometimes when we introduce something new, it's just a great reminder to be like, oh my gosh, I have that, I haven't used it in forever. This also gives me the opportunity to kind of touch base on that tool. And what the shaping kit is, it comes with different things, but this comes with like this thick piece of foam, shaping foam, and these little detail stylus. They have 4 different rounded balls on the end that allow you to shape it. Now, the video that Mario linked in the chat goes way more into detail on how to create different flowers and how to glue them and layer them and to put, you know, stamens on the inside, all types of little ideas. But for this, I just wanted to kind of just take you through. I've cut out a bunch of different floral shapes here, so I'll just put these off the side just to show you, because once you do it, it's really about like finding your own groove for shaping florals, okay? There is no right or wrong, and I'm not gonna do all these. I just wanted options, okay? Now, in the video that Mario linked, I was using watercolor paper. So I was using a much heavier weight cardstock. So if you're using a heavyweight cardstock and you're gonna shape, you'll see in the video I recommend misting the backside with water. But for this, when it comes to just regular cardstock, and this is just a traditional colored cardstock, it could be 80 pound, 100 pound, doesn't matter. You don't need to spray it. So if you're just using regular colored cardstock, don't worry about spraying it. You don't need to. The paper's not that heavy. Typically what you want to do is just get your die cut design, okay? You're going to start with the smallest stylus, and you just go in on the tip of the petals. And the other video is much more zoomed in. I'm not going to, again, worry about camera placement right now, but I'm just touching the tip of the petal with that small stylus. And that's all I'm doing. It's like almost like a stipple movement. You can move this around. And this, I'll hold it up just to show you what it's doing, but it's just starting to curl those petals. And if you wanted the petals to curl the opposite way, you would just be working on the back of the paper. But the whole thing about shaping is it's really, besides that it's therapeutic, it's really fun to do. So just touching the tips did that to the petals. It just gave them a curl. And again, we're just touching it with that small stylus. If you want the petals to keep going, you're just going to turn this over to the next size up of the stylus. And now we're just going to do a drag. And I'm not pushing hard. I'm just using the pressure of the tool. And you're just pulling this. It's almost like curling ribbon. Crazy, right? And it just pulls those petals up. And what's nice about this, especially if you have both sizes of those flowers, is that you can start building bigger blossoms, bigger blooms with that. See that? So there's the next one. See? Isn't that wild? So, and you could stop at any part. Like if you're going to build a flower, you can have some that are just kind of curved, you know, where you just did the stipple to the end and you're done. Then you could do other layers where they're curled up even more. And then if you really wanted this flower to like close in, I'll do another one. Let's do another one real quick. We'll do yellow. So I always just start with the tip, just because I think having those tips kind of curl in is, I don't know, just has a great effect. Otherwise, you know, it's just like these long, doesn't have as much of a curve if you don't do this first. Now, when you're working with this, it could be all different types of paper, and a shaping kit works with, the shaping kit has nothing to do with the shape of the die. Okay, it could be any flower that you have. So it could be flowers, it could be leaves, it could be pine cones, it could be holly branches, whatever you want. It's just showing you that it's easy to shape paper just by taking this tool and dragging it on there. So if you have any of the other dies, you know, maybe you have some of those funky dies from the original vault, gosh, this is a great way to bring all those to life, especially when you're doing the wreath and you have all these dimensional elements. Okay. So these are pretty much the same. On this one though, I'm going to take the next tool, go to the next size of the stylus, and I'm just going to almost like draw a circle in the center of this on the paper. See that? Watch what the flower is doing. See how it just starts going, it goes into a circle all on its own, and you see how it just starts closing up? just from that motion. And if you keep doing it, the whole thing will close up. It's crazy. So like that's what we have compared to this. It's almost like a cup. But do you see what I mean? That by doing different layers, and you could do your inking before or after, you could just start building these. And the nice thing is also you can just relax it. So when you're gluing it, if you're like, oh, this piece is just too tight, it's just paper. Paper has no memory. So you can use any kind of adhesive to start stacking these. But see, if you had the larger one, now you're getting petals that are just a bigger scale, and you can kind of create it. It's just so simple. It really is. But it's one of those things that if you've never used it before, or you haven't, you're like, oh, I forgot about it. It's just a cool reminder, especially as we get into spring. Now, Sizzix has different versions of this tool set. I did one because I wanted to change the size of the stylus. So that's what makes this one different than others, but there's no right or wrong. They're pretty much all very similar to what it is. So let's just talk about something a little bit more solid. We'll take a flower like this. I'll even take like this little one that's kind of purpley. And what's also great, where's that little bowl? Here, let me just take this, because in the bottom, these are like the centers of modern floristry. Keep in mind that, if you're going to build paper flowers, the nice thing about having a center is you can go over this with, say, embossing glaze and make that, shiny and dimensional. This way, when you go to build your flower and you glue it in, it has some shine. So that's really why I always like to include the centers as the die, instead of saying, oh, glue in a bead or something. You could, but it is nice because having that separate piece, you can alter it different than what you would do on the petals. So let's just talk about these flowers. It's really the same rules apply. When you have a wider petal, like for example on this flower, okay, instead of just touching it, I'm going to actually take this small stylus and stipple across the edge of that petal. So instead of just one touch, I'm just going to do this a little bit more, just because there's more petal to shape. And all different designs are going to have a different technique. It's just about you figuring out what you like. So again, just stippling, see how all of that petal just kind of curves a little bit more? It's really, really nice. Someone asked, do you emboss before or after you cut? I always like to emboss afterwards. I don't like to die cut embossing powder. I just think that you have a chance of it breaking off, and sometimes it won't cut through. But if you do what works for you, you can also do glossy accents. You can add that as well. But I would just accent the die cut piece with whatever I was going to do. So now same thing. I'm just taking that next size, and now I'm doing the drag. So it's like tap, drag, and swivel. There's the technical part. So there's the drag step. So see how now the petals are really starting to shape up, and you could be happy with that. You could say, you know what, I'm good with that because I'm going to put a pom-pom in there or something else. Like you can do a lot of different things to a floral. But now if we want to curl that even more, so we did the dab, we did the drag, and now we're going to do the swivel. And again, I do this one. The bigger one's just really if you have bigger flowers, like those brushstroke florals. You can still dimensionalize big flowers. It just takes more time to do that. But now we're just going to do that circular motion. So you'll see, it doesn't matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise. You see the flowers it's turning on the mat. And as it's turning, it's starting to curl in. And it's wild because this is a solid flower. You're going to see what the paper's doing. The paper's like starts wrinkling and creates really cool petal shapes. Then if you want to go to the bigger one to kind of really get it to actually curl up even more, I just flip the tool over, apply a little pressure just right to the center. And here's what's crazy. You see all those little ripples? It's almost like there were die cuts where the paper was able to fold over on itself, but it's not. This started out as a solid. And so I love how this looks, because if these, and you don't have to do this with colored cardstock. If you do this with inked paper, just imagine all the texture and detail you're going to get. I just like to demo it with plain because there's no smoke and mirrors here. It's really the tool that's doing all of those cool things. But I don't want you to always think like, oh, do I need to take my scissors and like cut into those petals first? You don't. You just use the tool itself, and there you go. That's the beauty of it. And so even on something small like this, don't underestimate what you can do. And you don't have to do everything. You don't, if you're like, hey, you know what? I want it to lay a little flatter. I just want to have those petals that have a little bit of life. Okay, well then don't do the swirly step. That's it. Done. So just giving yourself those options to play, that to me is what's magic. And even the leaves, and even small stuff like this, there's often stuff where, I've seen videos where people do the shaping and they lay out all these ground rules. They're like, your flower must be X amount of this size and this size. And I'm like, come on, it's whatever you want it to be. So even something like this, you can take that smallest tool and you know what to do. You're just going to stipple that, and that's going to give these tiny little leaves just some shape when you lay it on your cards. And you might think to yourself, well, hello, Captain Obvious, I can just roll it with my fingers. Yes, you can. But I find that when I try to roll with my fingers, I'm often folding the paper. I'm not shaping it. But hey, if you're good at roly-poly, go for it. This, to me, just gives a cool designer shape.
Did you already mention the paper?
It's just cardstock. It's just any kind of colored cardstock you want to use. Go for it. This just happens to be Sizzix cardstock, but you can use whatever paper. You can use anything that you have. So it's not the paper that's making it special. It is the tool. Because again, the video that Mario linked is distress watercolor cardstock. You could do it with whatever it is that, I agree, I'm too heavy-handed as well. So leaves, I don't know. There's no real rule for me for leaves, but I always start with it's kind of the detail tip, and I'll just start by kind of drawing in that little vein in the leaf. You see that? So not only does it deboss, but it already gives that leaf a little shape. And if you're happy with that, like, to me, it's great. It's nice and organic. But if you want it to be a little bit more curled up, remember that stippling on the edge is going to curl the edge. Rolling with the ball is going to make it curve up. So it really just depends. I'll show you. This leaf, I want the edges to kind of also turn. So all I'm doing on this one is just use the small one. I did that little vein and I did the stipple. And that just creates, to me, a really nice leaf. And if you did these, I mean, I only think in the world of grunge, but like I would do this out of like greens and distress, and they would look like dried leaves on a card or a tag. So good. So good. But this one, same thing. I'm just going to kind of, and you don't have to draw that in. I just like to do that because to me, it almost splits the leaf in two sides. So I'm going to do a little stipple on this one. But because this is a bigger leaf, I'm going to go to that other side. And now I'm just going to do the drag. And I'm just going to drag in the middle of that. And see? It does that same little pucker, that little wrinkle that it does. It's just amazing to me that, you know, a very simple toolkit. And I think, and this one, I'm pretty sure this kit also comes with squeezers. You know, just those little reverse tweezers. These are sharp little suckers. But, you know, maybe you want to hold on to the leaf while you're shaping it. That's the nice thing about like the squeezers, is that you can just squeeze it and it can hold on to that. So maybe you want to, you know, shape it. That's really the purpose of these. But some people like to assemble with these as well. But these do come with a cover because these are pointy. So you could even use it as a pokey tool. You know, if you wanted to poke in the center of the flower, just use the center of your squeezers. Anyway, I just wanted to, it's a quick demo. Like I said, if you want to learn more about, you know, different types of flowers and the build and gluing them, all that, just click that video link, Mario, if you don't mind throwing that video link in the chat again. Because I did a whole thorough thing when we launched this tool set years ago. It's just fun. But the whole purpose of, thank you, the whole purpose of this is to remind you of stuff that you may have or that you wanted to do or try. And believe it or not, you know, even if you're not buying dies, a tool set like this could give new life to the dies that you have. Where you're like, wow, I never thought of, you know, someone mentioned the, you know, the funky florals. I never thought of using it with funky florals, or what do I do with, you know, the boutique, like of the rose petals that we did in the last vault. It's just a good reminder. I think that's the important thing about videos. Yes, it could be new, but it could also be remember. So there you go. But yes, I agree. It's always like presentation is everything. See, that's what I needed to do. It makes the demo prettier to look at, right? When you have just little bowls of goodness. Okay. I think I covered that. I do love that. I love little dishes and things. It's fun. Okay. Let's set that off and put that off to the side. I'm trying to give stuff to Mario, but keep stuff I need. Let me hand you those. Thank you, Mario.
Sure.
Okay. Now, typically, I don't do a lot of die cutting on camera. Why? Because, well, if you've watched previous lives, because anything goes. But I need to demo stuff, so you guys are just gonna have to kind of hang out with me and just give me a little bit of grace here, because it's a lot of moving parts. But I want to demo how edge dies work, because I think if you don't know how they work, you might be intimidated by them. Okay, I totally felt one drop, but I don't know where it dropped. Hopefully it's not the one I need. Weird. Mario, I think I dropped a die, so if you see a die, That's just on me, but it might be in this stack of stuff. Anyway, let's go to it. Okay, the edge dies. These are actually really simple to use. Yeah, it's a scallop one. And that,
You just dropped it?
oh yeah, I did it. I dropped it somewhere. I was picking it up and it took a hop, skip, and a jump, but it's weird. It's like it would have been, I didn't even hear it. I didn't even hear it fall. Sorry guys. Okay. So the thing about edge dies is that you can cut a decorative edge on a lot of things, and I just want to share some tips on, I know everyone drops dies, but this one, like, I didn't hear it hit. So like I feel like it's going to be in a pile of stuff.
What am I looking for? Which one?
A skinny die with scallops.
Okay.
Isn't that strange? I have one in here. I'm just going to take this out.
Okay.
I have one right here. There we go. Good. Okay. Let's just take this one out because I want to talk about all the shapes, all the designs. So it's nice that dies come like this because then you won't lose them. That's why I put them on magnet sheets. Is it on my shoe? It's a good idea. It could be. You know, we have wood floors in the studio. So typically when something drops, like you would hear, you know, something. Not this time. Oh, well, it's all right. I got this. Moving on. So when it comes to cutting edges of stuff, I want you to keep in mind that when you're creating with this, the size of this, like when you're working on this is a 5.5-inch die. So it could go into a machine, a standard 6-inch opening. You can put it in this way, or you can go along the length of it. And that's why I wanted to talk about different ideas for using the edge die, okay? If you're a card maker, it's very easy just to put that on the edge of the card. That's what it is. You just put it on the edge and you run it through. And I'm going to demo how you do that. But you don't have to just be limited to that. And I think seeing it will probably give you a better understanding of how that works. So let's just start with a standard piece of cardstock. I'm just going to take, so this would be like an A2. So just imagine if this was going to be a card front, or it could already be a folded card if you want. It's completely up to you. Now, machine, whatever die cut machine you have, I'm just going to make sure that's kind of on camera because there we go. Okay. Just use whatever machine, but I'm going to try to give you some different tips as far as cutting. The cool thing about all of these edge dies is that it has one blade and a straight edge. So it never will cut a shape. It's just going to cut the edge off of something. So think of it as like just like a little chopper, as if it were almost like a paper trimmer, okay? So if I want to cut, let's just talk about the postage edge. The other, well, I don't want to confuse it with the other way, but you had to put it in a die and kind of figure it out. So this is what Jen and I did. We actually gave each die a margin of metal that we felt like was enough that the die would be stable, because these are still really flimsy, but we needed it to be stable. They're made out of steel, so don't worry about that. But this would allow a maker to easily line up that metal on the edge of the card, because this is what we're going to keep. Does that make sense? So if you use it this way, you'll get a different edge. These were all designed that you place the straight edge against the straight edge of whatever you're cutting, and you're keeping everything to the left of that, technically. Okay, so how do you secure these? There's many different ways. This first one, I'm just going to use some tape. So you can use any kind of tape that works in a die cut machine. There's many different, everybody's got an opinion on it, so you do you. But I'm just going to place that down, and I'm going to stick that to the paper, okay? Then for my machine, I've got my cutting pad. I like to put this into an angle if I can. If you put it straight on, you can do that, but by putting it straight on the roller, it's almost like curling ribbon, and you might make your die into a bit of a banana. You won't damage it. It'll go back the other way. But anytime you can kind of angle it just slightly, just do that. And then I'll stick that to the cutting pad as well. Now, running things through, this is my biggest tip for people that are die cutting different weird dies, be that little words or be that strips or whatever. This is a set of, it's a multi-pack cutting pad that I did with Sizzix, where you get a standard cutting pad, then you get a square one, and they have the beveled edges because that's what's going to go into the machine, and then you have this little one. And the little one, even though it's beveled, you can also run it through this way. It just depends on how you're going to work with it. So for me, I always switch them out. I just do whatever size cutting pad works the best for what I want to do. So for this, I like the square because I can make sure that I've covered that. I place it down, and it also just allows me to engage it in the machine and it just gives me a shorter pass. That's all. That's all it does. So I'm just going to run that through and cut it out. Can you use standard cutting pads? Yes. But I'm just saying that it's such a time saver. You wouldn't believe like how quick the pass is because you don't have you're not running the full cutting pad. It releases really quick. Then all you're going to do is you're just going to peel this off, and there's your edge that you've cut. Really simple. So look at that cool postage edge. Isn't that nice? And this is a 130-pound craft stock. You also get a cool trim. So your leftover, what you cut off, is still a usable piece that you can use for whatever you want. Okay. You can glue it on something. You can add to this if you wanted to. So if you wanted like that offset, because you know it's the reverse of it, you can do all sorts of things with cutting. But that's like the basic how-to is you take whatever edge die you're cutting, you place the straight edge along the straight edge, and you cut it, and then you're left with the piece with the edge that it was intended. All right. But what if you wanted to do something bigger? Because you're like, well, gosh, why didn't you think of this, or why didn't you think of this? I tried to think of however many ways it could be used if possible, which would include ideology backdrops, which are 10 inches. So maybe you wanted to create a full repeat because the designs are a repeat, or maybe you scored on the ideology vault paper and you wanted to put that postage edge on the correspondence. This is 8x8. Or maybe you had a full sheet of backdrops that you just wanted to add a cool edge, like this is just ideology backdrops, but you know, I took the ledger size and you want it just to look like it was ripped out. Not that a ledger has this notebook, but you get the idea. So the purpose of this is that you can create a repeat with any of these edges. You just have to be patient. So I'll talk about how you do it. And my advice on this is that you really go in and practice before you commit to your perfect, beautiful piece of paper. Get stuff so you understand the feel of it, because I'm only going to share the way I do it. I'm sure there's many other ways and tips and tricks that someone else might approach a repeat with the edge dies. But here's how I tend to do it. Okay, I'm just going to start. I'm set this off to the side. I'm just going to start with a cutting pad, and actually I'm going to work on my cleanest cutting pad. So not the one that I typically cut on, you know, where the blade goes into, but the clean one, the one that's typically on top. This time it's going to be on the bottom. All right. Then I'm going to use, this is from Sizzix. This is called Sticky Grid, and they sell it in different sizes and different sheets. I'm just using the full sheet because that's the size that fits the cutting pad. But I've just gone in and I've cut that into a 1-inch strip because I don't need to use this whole piece for what I'm showing. Right? In fact, it creates a bit more of a mess if you do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a piece of that sticky grid. It has release paper. I'm going to peel this off, and you can reuse it until you can't. So it just depends. You know, I don't ever save those release papers. You just use it till you can't. And then I'm just going to stick this across my cutting pad. Now, if you're working on a grid, you have a grid, so you can look through and use the grid from the mat to the grid. You get it. And it's almost like Post-it. It's pretty low tack stuff. So that stuck on. But the thing about low tack, and I've been reading the chat, just everyone sharing their favorite tapes. The thing about low tack is you might think it's low tack until it goes through the pressure of a die cut machine. And then all of a sudden it's like industrial strength adhesive. You cannot take it off. So don't ever underestimate when you're like, oh, I think this is low tack. It's not going to stick. That's pretty much what you want, because once it goes in, it's like it's on there. All right. So I've stuck this down. Now, this is just a strip of ideology backdrops that I'm just going to demo to do the edge. And we can just do the scallop edge. That's why I wanted to find that die, just to show you. It's an easy one. The more intricate ones, like, you know, the notebook, it's a bit trickier, but you get it, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the edge die, whichever one, whichever design I want to do, and using the grid on the sticky grid, I'm going to place the die down. Now, do you place it on the end? It doesn't really matter because you have to repeat it. So just do what's going to work for you. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that the die has sticky grid on both sides. I don't need tons of it, but I don't want to put it right on the edge of it. So I'm just using the lines of the grid to position the die. And you can move the die a little bit. So I'll hold it up. So you see how I just use that little grid line just to kind of square up the die. Then once it's on there, I want to push down. Okay, this is where things are going to get a little trickier. Now I was able to put this in the middle of my cutting pad because I knew that I was going to cut a strip like this. But if I was going to do an edge on a full sheet of paper, this would need to be over here. And in fact, if you don't want to do the sticky grid thing because you don't like it, there's nothing wrong with, pretend this is the edge. There's nothing wrong with you taking that die and doing exactly what I demoed initially, taking a piece of tape, taping that die right along the edge, and just running it through this same exact way we did the card. Okay, so you don't need to do the sticky grid for a repeat. You can do a repeat this way as well. I'm just showing you another option for people that are like, well, I don't really like to tape stuff and it gets a little confusing. Just, it's all about options, not a right or wrong, not you have to do it this way. Options. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper and I'm just going to place it design down, because we always go face down because we want to cut in, because when you cut into something, it creates that really nice little bevel. So I'm putting the little ditzy print down. But what I can do is now I'm going to start right on the edge of my design, but I want my paper to go over to that sticky grid. It's just so it gives me a visual on straightening it up. So see how like my paper just follows like the edge of that sticky grid, and it's stuck there. It's just stuck there enough to kind of go through the machine. Okay, now you understand the sticky grid part. Let's cut this thing and see how it works. The thing that I've learned about sticky grid, and this is where I said like trial and error, is that sometimes for whatever reason, your machine takes that die and just decides to like kick it out. Like everything's lined up right now, but once the rollers hit it, it could like give it a little spin off. And that's why I find when I'm doing this particular kind of repeat, going in straight is actually to my benefit. You're like, well, gosh, you are really a whole world of contradictions, because you said angle it on the last one. Yeah, but I wasn't repeating the last one. So that's why for me, just having it as straight as possible just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, now for this one, we can just go right onto this little plate. So I'm just using that little edge plate, or you can use the square, whichever one is just going to be easier. I'll probably use that square just because I want a handle. Here's my tip for this. You want to apply pressure with your hand to the die in the sticky grid as you're running it through. Okay, so once the machine engages, keep pressure on this and just dance it with your fingers until you're out of the way, because we want to try to keep that die and that edge as straight as possible. Okay, then you're going to peel this off, and you're just going to kind of be slow about it. Don't get all weirded out. There we go. So there's our first cut. Now, because this die doesn't have a blade going vertical, it only goes across. If you don't go right to the end, you have to snip that with scissors. No big deal, depending on your starting point. So if you're like, oh, it didn't cut, it just did, but it just wasn't right on the end. And then you have this piece of paper. Now you can keep that piece of paper there if you're good with it, or you can remove it. So if you're like, oh, this is driving me crazy, you can cut some of this off, but it depends. Do you also want a long other side of the strip? It's completely up to you. But for the sake of this live, I'm just going to trim that off so you can see a little closer. I'm leaving a little bit of that paper there of the design to kind of show you the next step. So what I want to do next is I'm just going to place it into that die. So where some of that design cut, I'm going to go in because I don't actually need the full length of that. See what I mean? So that's why it's just going to allow me to line up a little bit better by using some of that design. But if not, you can still wing it. Doesn't really matter. All right. So I'm just going to place that along the edge. I'm going to put that little design into that scallop, and I'm going to do the exact same thing with my paper. I'm just going to try to line it up the best I can on the rest of that sticky grid. So see, I've got a little bit of that design in the die. See how it just fits right in? And then I've used that edge of that sticky grid for the pattern. So far, so good. This was the technical part. Thinking is overrated for me. But sometimes, if you're kind of zen and you want some longer strips because maybe you're going to do like the border page of an art journal. Maybe you're not even scrapbooking, but you want a longer decorative or torn edge or something like that. It's really great. So same thing. I'm going to apply pressure until it's engaged in the machine. I'm going to just get that wheel going, but always pushing down, getting your fingers out of the way, and you don't have to be quick about this, just let the machine do its thing. But this way, it's just going to provide that perfect cut. So I'm just going to peel that off. There we go. And there is our repeat scallop. And you could keep going. Obviously, if you had a 12-inch piece, but your restriction, of course, is going to be the width of your machine. So if you're like, well, I want to do this on a 12 by 12, well, then you just need a bigger machine, you know, that you could fit a 12 by 12 piece of paper through it. But I think this is just a great way that you can do border strips. You could cut the other end if you want. Just, it's a simple thing to do when it comes to sticky grid. Okay, so that was your other option. And if decorative scissors are your jam, then go for it. Cut away.
That is such
Okay.
a cool thing to watch.
It's fun. It's fun to see the process. Okay, so let's talk about other things that you might want to use edges on besides paper, because you're like, well, I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to do the paper. Let me move this out and I'll bring it back. Okay, so we have paper. We've done cards. We've done decorative paper. We even have, the leftover pieces. But there's some other things that you can really do with these edges in a different way, where you can kind of think, I don't know, think opposite, think in reverse. And that would be for photographs. Now, these happen to be ideology snapshots, but these could be photos that you actually have printed. But the ideology snapshots, we intentionally put this wide border around all of those photos with the intent of cutting them. Now, I talked about the decal trimmer. If you have a decal trimmer, that's a quick way to do it. But it was really fun to play with the dies on photos because you can create really cool looking photos. And by doing this, I actually played around and I preferred the opposite way that I'm going to show you. So this is the right way. And when I say the right way, it means like what I told you about the card, where I took the die and I put it right on the edge of the photo and I cut it. The only thing I didn't like is that my edge around the photo was really minimal. And it's like, okay, well, you can move the die off of it, but then like, where's my registration? I'm like, oh, I don't really like it. So what I did instead is I took the die and I flipped it and I used the straight edge of the die, because remember the straight edge has no blade, and I lined it up to the edge of the photo when I cut it. And I'll demo this. But what it did is, instead of it just giving me this edge, which I didn't really care for, it did this. It actually debossed that straight edge around the photo. So it just it was like a 2-for-1. So this is the reverse of scallops. You see that now? So you might be like, oh, it's like the pinked edge. No, it's using the scallop die, but the scallop die was supposed to give me the bumpies. But because I put the die in reverse, it debossed it, and I loved that little edge. It's kind of a vintage round pinked edge. And for decal, I know I did a decal one. Here we go. See, look at that. Cool little decal edge, even though it's the reverse of decal, but it also debossed that line in the photo. So see, like by doing it in reverse, it actually worked out better than doing it the right way. So see, sometimes you have to just, when I say what if, I'm doing it. Like, it doesn't even have a chance to pretty much go from my brain to my mouth. Like, I'm already on it. Mario's like, what are you doing? I don't know yet. I'll tell you when I'm done if it worked or if it didn't work.
Cool.
So let me just demo what I was talking about. So we're going to go back to the machine. And for this, I'm just going to use tape again because it's just easier. So I got to get the right cutting pads like in check with what I want to do. Move this out. Okay. So let's take, because we're going to cut into it. So I'm going to do my choppy plate at the bottom. Okay, are we ready? Here we go. So we're going to take, and again, it could be whatever die. I'll just do the scallop just because I've been talking about it a lot. And I'm going to place the die. Now this one, I'm going to lose that little date. I don't care. I'll be okay with it. But you could also go right up to the edge. So if you want a wider border, you don't have to go right up to the edge of the photo. You could just do whatever you want. But I can use the edge of the paper. As long as the blade of the die is within the paper, you can kind of cheat a little bit. So I'm just going to place that down. I'm just going to do it on the mat so I can make sure that it's pretty straight. And use the tape. Now I just use this. This is just mint tape. I just use it until it doesn't work anymore. Because people are like, how long do you use it? Well, use it until you don't use it. But now again, because I'm not doing a repeat, I'm back to the wonky. Okay? And you might be thinking like, well, if you did them as wide as a machine, why can't I go in this way? If you go in this way, it's like your rollers are hitting a speed bump. And you know, if you've ever done die cutting on a straight edge, it like goes thunk. it just, like your pressure, your distribution of pressure is so quick because that blade hits the rollers once and it's done. By angling it, it's allowing the blade to continuously apply pressure to that die as you're cutting, and I just think you get a better cut overall. My opinion, no scientific proof. Okay, I'm gonna go back to that little cutting pad. That's just a little square. I'm just gonna engage that and run it through. So simple. And I'm just gonna peel it off. Look at that great edge. Come on. And see that debossed line? And you're like, well, wait a minute, it's gonna intersect. You don't notice that. For whatever reason, one corner cancels out the next. Plus you have a cool little edge. Look at that little, and this is layers, so it's coated, but how nice is that? Look at that little trim. Maybe you put it around something. Yeah, that's one of the, I'm not a big scrap keeper, but I think on something like this, I might be. So now I'm just gonna go the opposite side and just follow the same rules. And because the photo is smaller than this, you don't have to square the edge of the die with the edge of the paper. You do whatever you want. That's how you can get a more unique decal edge as well. All right, I'm gonna stick that down. Place it over there. There's my angle. And then whenever I place this down and everything's good, I'll just use the rest of that tape and stick it to the cutting pad. I mean, why not? Just more secure. See how the square pad just, it makes it, not only does it make it easier to hold, but see the pass is like, I'm done here. I don't have to keep going. It's just, but you do you. But that's why I did it, because I remember people were like, why did you need another cutting pad? Just to save time. There's our other cut. Ooh, it's so cool. Now, again, if you're just watching this, you can do it the other way. You can do it the way I did it on the card, where you're like, oh, but I'd rather have a scalloped edge. Okay, then you would just put it right on the edge of that, and it's going to give you the roundy on the outside. I just wanted to share creative options. It's all about options. So this one, just going to, wherever I want to put the die, doesn't really matter. Stick it down. See that tape? I mean, the tape goes a long way, because when you pick it up, you're like, this tape is not working. Oh, sure it is. Now, it's very important when you're running this through it, like as you get into, say, pieces like this cannot hang off the edge. It won't go through your machine. And that cannot hang off the edge. It won't go through your machine. So your angle of choice may not be as much as you want, but some is better than none. Okay? There you go. Some is better than none. So I'll place that down, and run that through. There's our edge. Whoop, one more. There's a little bit of,
You even managed to keep the date.
oh yeah. Oh, Paula would be happy. She loves the little dates. But even the little trims, this is just something that, like with anything else, if you're gonna do this, you'd get a stack of photos and you just go for it. Now I'm just getting mint tape off my fingers. Okay. Place this down. Now, you might be saying, well, wait a minute. When you get to the corners, like, how do you don't know. You get what you get and you don't throw fit. If something gets really wonky, if your scallops, like, if this corner, I don't know, creates like a little horn or something, just use your scissors on that. So that, yeah, that is one thing that, like, when I was doing it, I'm like, well, that is a really odd appendage that kind of came out of the end of that paper. I just cut it off. That's fine. Okay. Another little bit of one more cut. We're going to place this in. Get a little angle, stick this down, and we're going to run this through. Super simple. There you go. There's your photo. Fun, isn't it? Just a different way. So something else that you can do when you're working with edge dies is play around. Play around with different things that you may want to cut. And yeah, if you have decorative scissors, you can say, like, go for it. Well, you can go for it, but this is a coated paper. It's a little heavier, so I don't know if those old school scissors will do the job. They might, but it is fun just to give yourself some options. And of course, then when you ink it, just amazing fun to do. So whether you're going to do photos, or whether you're going to do the edge of your cards, or whether you're going to do papers or vellum, or, I mean, there's so many things that you can do just with, I think that set. That to me is important. I'll show you this because, well, as you know, we've ripped open the package. But there you go. That's the edge and the alpha. And the alpha, there again, if you're new to using letter dies, just a look at the packaging of Sticky Grid, because that's really how you can use individual letters and get them perfectly spaced, is Sticky Grid. So you cut a strip, you spell backwards. That's the only thing, because remember, you got to spell backwards. But it is it's a great tool for obviously all of those spellings and alphabets, but I do like it. It's fun. I love to see all of those things. Like that one was just really fun. It was a bit of a challenge, but I liked it. It was really great to do the dies. Okay, moving on. I think hopefully I explained it well, that you understand the concept, but I'll say it again. It's really important that you play around. Practice makes perfect. So if you haven't used something like this before, just give yourself a little test drive, right? Go with it. Zoe, glad I bought bulk paper to go with them. I know correspondence, like I just couldn't wait to do more correspondence stuff. It's good. All right, let's move this out of the way and keep going. We talked about flowers. We did a little edge. I'll pile this up. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
We've still got that little missing die. It's crazy. We'll find everyone's experienced that. Okay, next up, let's see what I want to do next. Oh, let's do this one. Why not? Just because it's just a little fun. I'm going to find the die. We're going to talk about this one. Now, this one really, when it comes to this whole industrial one, it is industrial. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh my gosh, it's not. But people have done really cool stuff with industrial pieces. I've seen industrial insects. I've seen flowers made out of gears. But if it's not your jam, it's not your jam. But there is one die that I think when you look at the set, you're like, I don't know, it just seems a little weird. And that would be the light bulb. And I love the light bulb because I love the Edison bulb. I use these in our home, just in all sorts of really weird lamps. But there's something cool that you can do. And I want to demo how we can turn the die into something really more realistic. And again, this is for the grunge lovers. So we're going to talk about how we can take that flat Edison die and actually create a dimensional grungy bulb. Okay, here we go. We'll play with that. So first thing we're going to talk about is surfaces and what we want to use. And so this is the part that if you're like, will it work with this? 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 My answer is you'll need to try it because this is what I found works and this is what I would suggest using. Okay, so I'm going to take just I've got some metallic cardstock. This is Ideology metallic craft stock, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But I've just got some that already has, I've talked about this in previous videos, it already has Xyron on the back of it, which is a permanent adhesive, but you could use glue for any of this, but these are just some scraps that I have of adhesive because we're going to do that. But what makes the light bulb and what creates this cool piece, not just for the packaging, the flat one, but also this, is using a product called Duralar. So this is the alcohol ink Duralar. This is from Ranger. This is a great transparent sheet for alcohol ink and all types of things. But what's really great about it is how it die cuts. So that's what I wanted to demo. Now each piece, it comes with a little tissue in between that keeps it from scratching on the surface. That's really important. But when you see, it's pretty thick stuff. It's 110 pounds. So you think like, how am I cutting 110 pound plastic? Well, it's because it's not typical acetate. So that's why I said when people go, can I use an acetate sheet? Can I use shrink play? You can try whatever you want, but this is what I found works for me. Okay. So I'm going to take the die. Let's just take the pieces out. There's our light bulb. And well, I'll just take all those pieces. This way I can lose a few more. Why not? Okay. So for the light bulb, I'm going to need the bulb itself. I'm going to need the little filament piece. That's going to be that little ziggity zaggity part. I'm going to need the metal base, a little screw base, and then I'm going to need the middle part of the filament as well. Now the middle part of the filament, just so you know when you guys are working with this die set, not to be confused with the little pointer on the gauge. This one it's a bit taller and a bit boxy at the bottom. Not to say that you couldn't use this piece, but just so you know when you're building it, what pieces we're using. All right, so I'm going to cut the bulb out of this. Just going to place this down. Now you can use a paper trimmer to cut this, or you can just use scissors, doesn't really matter. And I just start with the tissue just because the static charge kind of keeps it on there, but it's not attached in any way. It's just there for the static charge. But when I cut it, I remove it. Could you leave it on? I'm sure you could. it probably wouldn't matter. But this is what I'm going to cut. Now, you can use whatever machine you want. You can use the, you know, the fold away, but I just wanted to bring in the Sidekick because I wanted to really explain that this is more about the material than it is the machine. Because the Sidekick it's a great convenient machine. I wouldn't say that this is the most powerful machine on the planet, but man, I use it probably more than any other machine because it is so convenient. It is my go-to. I would say if I was rating them, this is a 90% use machine compared to everything else because I'm cutting small things, and if it can fit in there, it's gonna work. And I'm just gonna place that down just like you would a normal thinlet, but I'm gonna hope that you can hear this. I'm gonna try to get close so my mic will pick this up, okay? Let's see. I hope you heard that. That's where you know that little like weird crunchy sound, that crunchy sound is what makes this so perfect cutting. It's that kind of plastic, that little crunchy, crackly sound. That's what makes this work. It works really, really well when you're cutting with thin dies. But there's cooler things to Duralar than just its cuttability. Okay, and that's what we're going to get into. So I've cut that, but while this is here, let me cut out the other little things. Maybe we want to do this one copper. I have a little bit of copper. That one's brass. I'm going to do copper. So I'm going to do I'll do a little ziggity zaggity in this. Let's just angle it. That's the nice thing about metallic cardstock or stuff that doesn't have a design is really just like, see, fitting your dies. If your dies fit on the paper, it's good. Then you just like hold that sandwich flat and just go. Okay. So I've got that. That's going to be the metallic for both pieces. And sometimes like that little ziggity zaggity likes to stay because of the Xyron. I leave it till I need it. Then I've got the base. And then we'll do the other part of that filament. That's just going to be in black. So I'm just going to place that, you know, along the edge. Save real estate because I'll use that black for something else. This is just the distressed black heavy stock. Okay. And honestly, this is the same cutting pad set from Go. I don't know what these are made out of, but they're magic. They're so good. Like you can just, you just chop into it and it just stays happy. Okay. If you do a lot of Sidekick work and let's say you're like, oh, my Sidekick is not like sticking. It's just because this is getting too dusty. So just wipe it off or just mist it with a little water. And then when you put it on your glass mat, like you can carry your glass mat around with it. Not that I would recommend that, but it's that strong. Mario was trying to get the machine off. I'm like, oh, I sprayed water under it. Water, it's like, it does really good. Okay, so we got these pieces. We got our base, our little filament, we got that top piece, and we've got our bulb. And I know it's here and it's clear, but can you guys see that? Pretty good. I can try to zoom in, but things can go crazy, guys. So just brace yourself, okay? Because whenever I zoom in on a live, it's like buckle up. Buttercup. There you go. Is that a little better? Hopefully. That's good. I need to see. So there is a bulb there, but here's what we're going to do to alter it. I think it's going to make it really fun. We're going to use some alcohol inks. Now you can use whatever alcohol inks you want, but to create this effect, I use two colors. I use Latte and I use Smudge. Both of these to me are like the perfect little grunge, and I used a tiny blending tool. You can use whatever you want. If you're like, but I want to use this and I want to go for it. I just like this because it just is a little bit more convenient when it comes to working with inks on there. Now, if you don't want to work on your glass and you want to work on deli paper or cardstock, that's totally fine. For the sake of this live, I am going to put a piece of cardstock under it just so you can see what's happening. See how you can see it on paper? But you can work directly on the glass mat. I just wanted to show you about the colors. You don't need a lot. Don't need a lot of ink at all. So I'm just going to do like a drip of Latte. It's just a weird color. This is just kind of like a little grunge tool because normally you're like, well, don't you use felt with alcohol ink? Typically, but I don't want those little fibers on this light bulb. And then I'm going to do a couple of drips of Smudge. Smudge is like not as dark as mushroom. It's a little bit lighter. And you're going to let the ink do its thing. See how it kind of wants to work its way on the outside? I'm just going to gently blow on the ink. If you hear that, it's me just like drying the ink. That's it. That's all you do. Could you keep going? Yes, you can keep going. You could add 12 layers if you want to, but this is That's what we've got. So let me just move it out of the ink zone so you can see that's the effect it gives. By starting with latte, it's pushing, like alcohol ink replaces itself, okay? So by starting with brown, which was latte, that was my light brown, the smudge pushed the brown to the edge. If you would have done it in reverse, you would have had smudge on the outside and brown on the inside. Make sense? So that's why you can go back again and again and add whatever you want to it. Now, because I like things to be a little bit more grungy than they are, I'm going to take a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in a spray bottle. Do not use blending solution in a spray bottle, but isopropyl is totally fine. I'm going to keep my distance, so I'm way off camera, and I'm just going to mist some of the iso, and it's just going to, wherever it hits, you'll see it's going to create these little age spots. I don't want to be close, because if I did, it would wash off all the alcohol ink, and then it's a do-over. It's not like you ruined it, but just from the distance, just some little sprays. I can see it already. I'll hold it up to the camera so you can see it. Do it again. That's good. I'll do maybe one more. There we go. Okay. So now let me just show you what it did. You see all those little dots? See these little age spots? That's from the isopropyl alcohol. If I do a little bit more, I'll just kind of maybe do some a little bit bigger. There you go. Now you'll see. Every single time you add, it just creates more of those dots. It's just, again, creates almost like bubbles in the glass. So do you have to do that? No. But that's just what I like. I don't like to go over this repeatedly with the ink tool, like if you were making a background, because I don't want it to be all marbly and veiny. I want it to be like old glass. So that's the difference. So if you find that like your glass is not as translucent or your bulb, it's because you overworked the ink, and as it was drying, it started creating those veins like it would do on cardstock. Okay. But again, play around. If you don't like this, you could start over. You can hit it with alcohol, it cleans it off, and you start again. All right. So now that we have this kind of look to it, the alcohol ink dries really, really quick. But we want to create a shape, because right now this is flat. One of the great things about working with this material, the alcohol ink Duralar, is not only is it inkable and die cuttable, it is heat stable. Heat stable meaning it's actually moldable. It will relax and come back and do all sorts of cool things. So I'm going to take these little hot hands, okay, because they're silicone. Now, could you use tweezers? Yes, you can. You use whatever you want. And I'm going to hold the base of the light bulb. It doesn't matter what side. I prefer to have the ink on the outside of my light, because the alcohol ink, it dulls it a little bit, whereas this side, see, it's all shiny. So I want my old bulb to be, it's still shiny, but not as like perfectly glass. But you could do either side. You do whatever works for you. But I'm going to hold the base of it, because really all I want to do for the bulb is I want to give it a bit of a curve. I don't necessarily want to roll it up at the bottom, and I want to keep the bottom flat. You'll see why in a second, okay? So next we're just going to use a heat tool. I'm just going to use, I got to plug in my heat tool. Hold on. Technical difficulties. I am one of those people that if I'm not using heat tool, it is unplugged. But I typically plug it in for live. All right. So could you use an embossing gun for this? Yes. But you don't have to. If you have both tools, all we're doing is heating up the plastic until it gets soft. This is why shrink plastic would not work for this technique, because we don't want the light bulb to shrink. So all you're going to do is you're just going to heat it. It doesn't take long, and you could be pretty close to it, and you're going to see it like start to relax. It just, I don't know, it becomes a little limp, a little lifeless. Once you do that, you're just going to take your hands and you're just going to give it a little shape. It's not hot molten. And all I'm doing is just giving it a little bend right at the top. See, the bottom is still flat. It's not hot to the touch. So it's not metal. It's Duralar. And you wait just a second and you let go, and it retains its shape. And if you want to shape it again, you can heat it again. And let's say you didn't even like the shape. The only reason I use the hot hands is because I don't want my fingers there. It's not that the plastic is getting hot. It's that I don't like my hands that close to a heat gun. Okay. But let's say you don't like it. You can heat it again, and it will flatten itself back out. So it goes back to just being flat. So it's totally up to you. Or you can just shape it again. But you need to let it cool in the shape that you want to give it. Simple. So this is really cool for like flowers. You can actually give a shape. So it just depends on the contour that you want. If you're like, oh, I like that, I want it more. Just keep in mind that if you plan on sticking this down to a surface, you don't need much. You know, think of it like more of a fingernail, not like half of a pipe. Okay, just that little arch is going to make a big difference in how it looks and how it catches the light. So less is more on that, is what I think. All right, so that's the glass. That part's easy. But now we're going to do a little grunging. And for me, a distressed crayon is the easiest way to create some grunge. And it's going to do grunge on a couple of things. It's going to do grunge down here on the base, but it's also going to add this little black muck around the light bulb. Easier to do with a crayon than it is to do with other alcohol ink or paint or archival, because you can add and subtract. So I'm just taking that black crayon and I'm going right around the edge, just right into the plastic, and then you just take your fingers and kind of smudge it around. It's this way you can kind of leave little chunkety bits here or there. You can smudge some up from the bottom because the crayon will dry on this as well. So see, if I want the bottom to be, more sooty, it's just fun. And then I'm going to do the same thing. And if you don't like it, water will take this off. So, you know, you can lick your finger and wipe it off, or you can just do a little paper towel or a Q-tip, whatever you want. But see, it just creates a nice little smudgy effect down there. In fact, I think that's a little much. So there you go. I can just take some of that off. All right. Yeah, that's probably the one time that you may want to lick your art, because that would help. All right, so this, I'm just taking crayon and I'm putting it into that debossed part of the little base of the bulb, and I'm just using my fingers till I'm happy, because I want the copper to just look a little aged. I don't need to age the filament, because this is going to age that. So it was latte and smudge. I see Mario over, which means somebody was like, what colors were those again? I know he told us. I know he told us. Yeah, latte and smudge. All right, so let me just using water to clean off my hands, because water takes off the crayon super fast. Okay, there we go. Just so I don't have to use all, you don't have to see those just dirty fingers. There you go, clean. So like I said, you don't need to, you could grunge this, but you don't need to, because it's going under the grunge layer of the bulb. That's pretty simple. So here's how I do it. You do what works for you. Because these are already Xyroned, I don't need to add adhesive. But if you didn't have any Xyron, you would just add some glue. And I start with the base of the bulb, and I'll place that down. Then I start with the black center part of that filament. These are all, it's all peel and stick. So I'm using the craft pick just to peel off the release paper of the Xyron if it's not showing up on camera. And then I just put this a little bit above the base of it, just a little bit, leave a little bit of a gap. Then I'm going to take my pick and I'm just going to like go in under the top of the bottom of that bulb. I'm just going right under here, and I'm just lifting up a little bit of that. You'll see why in a second. Then I'm going to peel this off. That little piece, you want that little cutout to show up, because it will show up in your light bulb. So just poke that out. Normally I just go right into my finger and it sticks on there. Then we're going to take this, and we've got to peel off the back. This is the one that I need to be like, I don't know, less than an inch from my eyes just to see, you know, where that is. But I'm trying to use my phone. There we go.
You're good.
Yeah, I use my phone as a little magnifier. This, because it's super sharp, I don't use a die pick, because a die pick is a little bit more dull than this. This one is, the tonic one is super sharp, and that helps get the paper off. Okay, I'm just going to place this about midway, because I want that little loop. I'll show you. I'll hold this up. I want that little loop to kind of come out right on the top of that. So you don't line it up at the bottom, you just kind of stick that there. So far, so good. Then all you're going to do is take the bulb, and because we have the base, we're just going to slide that into the sticky part of the base, and we're going to press down. And that's going to hold everything there. Now, if you want to put some adhesive there, go for it. If you want to put a little collage medium or whatever, but like, that's your bulb. And it's there. It's on there. Isn't that cool? So you could add this however you want, but it makes it really fun and really, really easy. So yes, you could keep a light bulb, and yes, you could do a grungy Edison bulb with this. But the other thing to keep in mind, like I was saying, is maybe you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, ooh, I don't really think this is like, I'm not into the grungy. Well, look, remember, it's all about the shape. The beautiful world of Sizzix and die cutting in general is that a shape could be whatever you want it to be. So if you like things that are, well, more colorful, then you can do the same thing in colors. And you don't have to use all the colors. I just obviously did this for the sake of the live, but you could take any of your alcohol ink colors and do exactly the same thing. Now these I didn't melt and didn't shape, but I will. But I just wanted to show you. So I didn't grunge them. All I did was I did silver bases, same light bulb. I just did a single color. So I didn't go in and, but you have the technology. So if you want to do like a light pink and a red, and maybe you want to do party bulbs, you can do whatever you want. But for the filaments, because I really wanted the light bulbs to look metallic, instead of doing brass or copper or any of that, I just used all these different metallic colors. Because this is metallic craft stock, that's what I did for the silver and the copper and the gold. But these are all metallic. So I just did the coordinating metallic color. So I'll reveal, you know, if we take off the bulb, because we know how it's there, see, it's orange under there. The red, it's red under there. And I just think that gives it just a really cool aesthetic. So this would be fun for, you know, just a single color. And you want to put a little sentiment like, you know, you light up my world, or here's a bright idea, or like this one, no beauty shines brighter than that of a good heart. Maybe you add a little heart to that little filament in there, and you just add that sentiment. And these long sentiments, remember, you can cut these up. These are just small talk stickers, but you could break that up and do a card. So you could do this for Christmas. I mean, there's so many different ideas for just this little light bulb, but I wanted to just show you how you can, you know, if you're in that steampunk realm like I am, like it does make like the most epic Edison bulb ever, but it's also very cute for colorful light bulbs. So that's what I wanted to share from an idea for light bulbs, because I think, you know, you just look at that and be like, no thanks, I'm good with that. But I don't know. I think adding light bulbs to journals and, you know, having like a paper doll behind it or something, it's very, very cool. And that's the magic of working with alcohol ink Duralar. It's inkable, but it's also, you know, heatable, moldable, but more than that, die cuttable, which I really like. Okay, moving on. So far, thanks for all the kind comments. I really love this approach, because what I love is, you know, it's going to be great that Pete's going to be sharing the makes at the end of this month, but I love the fact that I get to demo all the ideas for the dies that I put into the design part of it. So just going to move all these off, put them back in their bag for now before I organize. Good fun. Okay, moving on. So far, so good, Mario? So far, so good. All right. Next up, I'm going to go into Noteworthy, because I do like that one. So let me find it. We're going to talk about that one. Talk about all the cool, fun ideas we can do with it, because it has some great things. So we're going to talk about some of the elements. Here, I think I can zoom out now just a little bit. There we go. We're going to talk about some of the elements. That works. Am I too close?
No, you're good.
Okay. Well, we'll see. I think I might have to move out a little bit, but we're talking about some of the elements, and we'll also build the clipboard. Okay. You guys good? So for this one, I just wanted to talk about the cute little file folder, because the file folder is, well, it's just cute. It's really small and really perfect. It's very easy to do when you're working with it. So we'll talk about the folder, these little file folders. So I'm going to move this off so we can have a little story time. There's a lot of surfaces in the world of distress and ideology that use a material called mixed media heavy stock. This is the same paper that the tags are done in, that I do for Ranger in the distress line. And it's also the same paper that we do in ideology. So like when you see these other folders, these are the ideology ones where you're like, oh, it's the same size as those ideology folders. Not even close. Like this is the small one in the pack, and that's the size comparison. It is much, much smaller. But what's nice is, by knowing the material these are made out of, you can cut these file folders out of the same paper to use in your journals and tags and all of those other things. That's what I wanted to talk about. So the mixed media heavy stock, you can get it in 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 already pre-cut. You can also buy it in sheets in 8 1/2 by 11. Okay, so that's the paper that we're using to create this. Okay, so I'm just going to work with one that's already pre-cut, just because I want to cut a folder and just share some tips, because I think that's what this is all about. So the die itself for this one is an open die. And I think you need to just understand this a little bit. And we talked about this during the Chapter 3 release, if you want to go back and watch one of the older videos. But what's nice about this is that when you place it down, it's going to cut the folder, both sides, And it's also going to do a crease rule. So we'll talk about that also. But because it is a framelit, meaning because it is an open die, let's say you wanted to do a folder and your intention was you were going to put a gift card in there. Okay? You could take any die that you have. Let's say it just happens to be this frame, but maybe it's an oval or a circle. And when you're going to die cut, if you place this die in there before you cut it, it's going to cut the folder and also cut out that window or shape. So if it wasn't a square, maybe you had a heart die that you put in there, but make sure it's upside down because this is going to fold up. But if you put the die in when you run it through, it would also cut a window. So when you close this, if you made a little pocket, you can see through it. So think junk journal. Maybe you have an oval die and you're going to seal up the edges, but when you use it as a pocket, you want to be able to see through it. Very much like we did here. These are the pocket cards we do for ideology. It would just create an aperture in there, and you can do all that because it's a frame die. Okay, so just always understand your options when it comes to working with this. I saw someone say you can use manila file folders for this. Absolutely. If you have those, cut them up, repurpose them. Okay, so cutting out this, really simple. So would this cut with a sidekick? No, it's too big. It's not that the die wouldn't, it's just that it wouldn't fit in the machine. So that's why we're going to a machine that it fits. Place that down. So we go blade side down on our paper. We take, what did I do with the cutting pads? I knew I was going to keep them pretty centered off camera. Little angle, got the beveled edge, made sure it's covered the die. Engage. Okay, so you see when I tried to go in the machine, like it's not wanting to go? It's because I have my cutting pad way too close to the edge of this die. So I need to go further so the machine can bite onto the sandwich before it can eat it. Does that make sense? So just keep that in mind if you're using these smaller cutting pads. If it's not going in, you have to have it has to have enough of a bite. Okay? So there's our folder. Move this off again. Doing pretty good staying organized. There we are. Okay. I just saw a question about same size as chapter 3 folder. I covered that at the beginning, so there's a size comparison at the beginning. So here we have that crease, but here's the thing to know about these file folders. You can do either tab. It just depends on which way you fold it. Now, obviously, the way it was designed, okay, it just doesn't really matter because the edge, you're going to get one clean edge here or one clean edge. And when I say clean edge, I mean like that little cut kind of beveled edge, because remember, this is how it cuts. So you're not going to have two beveled edges on it, but that's the beauty of it. When you put it together, it's totally balanced, that you've got the little detail here and then you have the detail here. Does that make sense? So you can fold this however you want, depending on which side you want the tab on. Now it has a little crease rule, which you can use. You can just fold it against the edge of something. If you're making a lot of these and if you're using mixed media and you have a scoring tool, I did find it easier that if you just go in and you score at like 2 1/8, it just makes it a little bit easier to just fold, but you do you. It's enough that it would create that space. You don't have to go in and crease it, but because it's thicker paper, it does make it a little bit easier. But that's how you can create a whole slew of mini file folders. Now, the other thing about this, which is fun, is let's say you had stuff like this. Let's say you had some of this ideology stuff. There's one thing that we put in here that's really fun. There's this one. It's like a little accordion book. And this is, again, for not so much of this SKU, but just an idea, like if you're into junk journals or cards. What's nice about this size is that it works as a great inclusion in this scale of stuff, because in the pocket card, we have these file cards for the vignette card file, and we do these file cards 1 and 2. There's 2 different sizes, and all of the, or 2 different packages, and they're all designed to fit in the vignette. So they're all the same width. But I wanted to make sure that folder was a little smaller so it could be used with this SKU if you wanted to. I know that, you know, Paula and many people have been doing a lot of things with it. So it's just fun to have a little inclusion that you could, you know, sew some of these in there. And now you have something inside this smaller area, which means, you know, could you technically put this in, I think there's like a little, where is it? Like a little library card pocket that's in there as well. So you could have the file folder and those will fit because it's small enough to fit in there and you still have the opening. So just keep that in mind. If you like to create these, that where you're like, why did you come up with this size? Well, template, and we wanted to make sure it worked with a lot of things. Even if you wanted to put a little file folder in an envelope, it fits in there as well. See, even with the tab. So just stuff to think about. All right, there's the file folder. The thing about the file folder also is there's a tiny little piece. If you see that down, you're like, what is that little rectangle for? That's if you really wanted to cut a piece of decorative paper or something, you could use it as a label for this tab. You could also use it here, but it's sized for this tab. So if you're doing this tab and you were folding it over, that's going to be your little label. Maybe it's just a color, or maybe it's got something. I don't know. It's just going to be fun. I'm telling you, this set, like for those Chapter 3 lovers, think of this as like the Chapter 3 bonus, although it's Vault. All right, so that was for the folder. Here's another one that I want to talk about that I think before I get into the clipboard. And that's going to be this little one. So this little one, as I mentioned, is cutting out pieces of tape. Now, what kind of tape? Well, whatever you want to put in a journal. But there is something that we did in ideology last year that I think people, I don't know, I think they underestimated the magic of the cellotape, right? I absolutely love this tape. This is the cello sticker tape. This is old tape. Maybe you're into it, maybe you're not, but this is that whole grungy, beautiful tape. When you're working with this tape, it comes, I mean, it only shows this, but it actually has 3 different sizes of tape. Now, if you're like many makers where you do a lot of small things, you'll probably go through these sheets of small pretty quick. And I knew this early on, just because seeing how makers made with it, this was really one that just, it fit better scale-wise, but I didn't want to not put in big tape into this pack. But here's a solution. We can take these dies, and these dies in this SKU, we're using the same die lines as this SKU. So I actually got the die lines from Advantis, from Ideology. Jen traced them for Sizzix, and so these pieces of tape, these short ones, are the same die line. So you could cut more tape. So I'm going to talk about how we can cut out, if you want to cut out your sticker tape. And you're like, because you can make your own, you could do packaging tape and parchment. I've seen so many different videos. But if you have this and maybe it's this size that you're not using because you're never going to use the big stuff, here's how we can die cut it. All right. So again, I'll preface this with you do you. If you have 1,000,001 other little tips and tricks, go for it. But here's what I found works for me. That's the beauty of designing. If there's something that you want and you have the opportunity, it's like, hey Jen, could we like squeeze these 4 little random things in there? She's like, sure, it'll fit inside this and that. All right. So we've got these different sizes. So here is the tape. And it's actually a sticker. So one side is really shiny and one side is kind of dull. The dull side is the printed side. That's the side we want to cut. Think of that as your pretty side. So what I like to do is actually cut out a piece of it first, because I want to keep it on its release paper. Okay. Now, the other thing that you want to remember, this is not Duralar. So this is not what we just cut the light bulb out, because this will kind of prove my point. That just because, and it's thinner than Duralar, so you think, oh, this is going to cut easy. No, not all plastics cut the same. Some are a little bit more stretchy and more elastic, and that would be this one because it's a very thin sticker tape. Plus it has adhesive on the back of it as well. So here's what I like to do if I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to take a sidekick. If you ever try to cut things, and this is a good tip if you're die cutting felt or fabric or anything, the blade of a die, it always wants to do its job and go through until it hits a foundation, which is typically your cutting pad. That's why we have cutting pads. That's why they have marks, because the idea of die cutting is you want the die to go into it, like a cookie cutter. Right? When you're cutting out cookie dough or biscuits, when you push down, you kind of push and twist until you kind of know it made contact with that slick surface. It's no different than die cutting. So you could use any machine. I'm just doing the sidekick because, well, it's tiny. So you can put as many dies on here as you want, but I'm not going to go overboard and do all of them. But you can do as many that will fit on here. Okay? You don't need to tape them. You don't need to do anything. You can pretty much get 2, sometimes 3, depending on the size of these, because these are shorter than these. But I want to talk about it. If you try to just cut it out like this, you may be successful and you may not. Okay? Let's try it, just to kind of prove my point. Now, they're slickery little suckers. So I need to set this down first before I pick up. I can't do it in midair for the sandwich, meaning the die wants to slip and slide over this sticker tape. Yes, you could put tape down on top of tape, but I just want to make my sandwich. I'm going to press it down just to keep that pressure. I push it in the sidekick. Here, let me move the sidekick up just so I can see that I'm not really on screen. There we go. I just push in the sidekick until the handle turns. This way I know which way I need to go. If you're like me, I forget all the time. Okay, so we heard a little crackle. So we might be good on this. I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay, this piece came out. This one, so this one fell out. This one, it did not. Okay, so did it cut some? It cut enough. So let me share a little tip. I'm gonna go back, get another piece of tape. So I could go in and run it through a second time. That's always an option. You know, we always know about, you know, double pass and all that. But back to my fabric and felt analogy. If you've ever cut fabric or felt with a thin die, you might know this trick. You might be familiar with it. So let's take that die, that'd be this one. If you take a piece of copy paper, this happens to be a Post-it note. I use the sticky part of Post-it note for coloring. You guys may have seen that in the last one. And this is a leftover, it's just thin paper. So it's copy paper. I don't want to use cardstock. Cardstock would put too much pressure. And if you have too much pressure, it would emboss into the sticker because the sticker would come out of this die. So just copy paper, Post-it note's going to be fine. And let's see the difference that's going to make when we die cut this. So I just put that underneath the sticker tape because the idea is that this die is going to not only want to go through the tape material, but it's going to want to go through the paper because a die always wants to cut into the cutting pad. It's like it's its mission. Okay. And so by having that piece of paper there, it just creates a clean cut of that same piece, the same design that didn't want to cut before. So if you're ever struggling cutting through something, copy paper or a Post-it note, because everyone's like, use a shim and use it. No, it could be something as simple as this. It just makes that die go a little bit further and make it that finishing cut. I often do this with fabric all the time. It's what cuts through those final little threads, okay? So you can cut out a bunch of small pieces of tape from your large pieces of tape or make your own stuff. It was just something that I wanted to share, especially for the fans of, you know, this ideology sticker and you're like, oh, I just need more small little pieces. Well, if you have this die set, that's really what those are for. But if you don't, I mean, just think about it. You can cut this out of any kind of patterned paper or whatever you want, and it's just little tape. It's like washi tape. Washi tape are all different patterns. So yeah, so now we really just need like sheets of cello and we can just cut our own. But you can get a lot out of those big sheets, especially if you're not one to use them. And I like the fact that, you know, the art here, it's all random. So I love that I can position my dies, especially on the big ones. You know, you can position it like, oh, okay, I want to have some of that clear. I want to have some of the dark. Just something fun. So there you go. That's just an idea with the cello tape. Okay, now let's talk about this one, the clipboard. Okay, there's a lot of things with the clipboard.
Is the star of the show.
It's very cute. I love it. Okay, there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to share and I'm going to talk about, including the line, note paper, all that. So first, it's understanding just how this works. And for this one, I don't need to die cut it because, I mean, there's no technique like I just shared about adding a piece of paper or whatever. It's really just the design. All right, let's talk about the clipboard. To make this clipboard, and of course that clipboard is going to be, we're talking, oh snap.
What did you drop?
Oh, just some little screw heads. Thanks, some ideology stuff. I put it right on the cutting pads and it's like a little slip and slide over here. I know. Maybe you'll find the die when you're down there. No, okay. So, oh yeah, it's photo booth too. Okay, thanks Mario. All right, thank you. Yeah, just a little slip and slide, a little ideology go. If you guys see my table. Anyway, okay. So here's what cuts this out. First, we have the clipboard die. So this is going to be your base die, your foundation die. I do need a metal detector, Zoe. And this is what's going to cut out the whole base background. This is one that I cut out of brown. Now, it's a clipboard, so we want it to be a board. So I like to work with, when I'm cutting this out, I prefer mixed media heavy stock. Now you can use whatever or craft heavy stock, sorry. You can use whatever paper, but craft heavy stock is a 130-pound cover. So it's almost like a thin chipboard, okay? But we can also stack it up, which I'll talk about. But you can cut out as many of these. So I love that, like when I do, when I do my quarter cuts and I get all these little A2 pieces, you can cut out a lot of real estate. If you don't pre-cut your paper, you can just line them up and get a bazillion chipboards. And that's what I was doing. I just had all these little clipboards out of, I called it chipboard, but it's really clipboards out of craft stock. Slow down, Holtz. Clipboards out of craft stock. That's what that base die. So this base die not only cuts everything, but it also has a blade here. So this isn't a crease rule. You can always tell the difference if you touch it and it feels more raised. That's typically a blade. So it's going to cut through there. That's what actually does the clip holding function, okay? Is just that little slice. But then I wanted to create more of a clipboard vibe. So there's two different dies. So when you get this, you might open the pack and go, oh, I got two of the same thing. No, different. They're both the same on the top, but one is a little shorter than the second, and this one has a crease rule. It has a line, not as tall as the blade, but it's going to deboss the detail. And what that does, you can see both of these are cut out. This is the base piece that's smoothie, and this is the other piece that's a little shorter, but then it has that little deboss line. So when you stack them together, I wanted to give it the illusion of that clip that kind of rolls over like a clipboard, where it looks dimensional. Otherwise, just imagine if that was your top piece, it would look really flat. It would be obvious. It's like, really, that's flat paper. But this kind of fools the eye of like, is that curved? Is that turned? See, it's all about the details, not only a shorter piece, but that debossed line. So to build the clipboard, so that's all you need for the structure of the clipboard. So this is the craft heavy stock. This is just what we used on the last one, just classic metallic. So this is craft stock. It's also craft. This is 100-pound, but this is the metallic. So it's just like what we use for the light bulbs, but this is the classic pack. This comes in two different SKUs. It comes in classic metallic and then the pretty colors metallic, but they're all metallic. And what's great about this is it is a printed metallic, so it sands, it does all sorts of cool things. But this is just die cut. Now you could do Xyron, you can do all those things. It could be adhesive, but I'm just going to show you with glue because it's really easy. Okay. So to do your clipboard, those are our pieces. I'm going to let's take some collage medium. You can do all of your inking, you can do all of your sanding. I'm just going to do the build first, and then we're going to get into the embellishing because you know me, but I want you to understand how easy it is because you don't need to think, oh, it's so complex. There's that. We line up the top with the top, and it automatically lines up and covers that slot, okay? Place that down, press and hold. Okay. Next piece, little glue. You can tell I don't normally use glue with die cuts. Isn't that weird? You can use any kind of, any kind of, because you see me, I can peel and stick like you saw with that filament. I'm quick with that. Oh, that collage medium? Yeah. Sanitizer will take it off, but I'll wipe it off. Thanks, Mario. Okay, I'll place that down. I'll hold that, and I'll just clean that glue off while it's wet. It's water-based. There we go. Okay. See, even glue on my fingers. Let me put my little lid on real quick over here while I'm holding this.
We never glue any of those.
Seriously, it's so weird. It's like glue, die cuts. Okay, and then that's your clipboard. So this is still, see, it's functioning. There's your clip, zippity-doo, done. That's the basic, okay? The other part is going to be this, because I knew if I was making a clipboard, I would want to clip something on it, and I wouldn't want to have to figure it out. So that's why we put this die in here. This die, even though I showed like could be the window of this folder, which it could be, or it could be a ginormous label, it's really the paper sheet. So the paper is just paper. It's just taking paper that you buy and you have a die cut. We have the technology. See, sometimes the obvious is so like, really? Really? Yes. So all I did was took out a couple sheets of this paper because it's so thin. You could cut multiples at a time. Then I chopped it down so it would fit into my sidekick. So I cut it down to just like 2 1/4. So let me just get my, I'll work like everyone else. Don't you just pile it on? I do. That's all I do. Because Mario's like, do you want me to clean that up? I'm like, no, I just build the mountain higher. Okay, so 2 1/2 inch is the width of the sidekick. So as long as it's 2 1/2 or less, I just did 2 1/4 just to make sure. And then because I want multiple sheets, I know that this pad is 7 inches tall, so I'll just do about 3 1/2, and then I can stack that up. So even though this looks wonky, don't be all judgy McJudge. You have a die. So then all I did was place the die on top of this, created whatever margin I wanted, and I ran it through if I wanted a bigger margin. And if you wanted more paper, you could go 2 1/2. It's totally up to you. And you just run it through. You could probably do about 4 sheets. Maybe it's totally up to you how many. I run it through and see what I get. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. But then you have all of these little great notebook papers, and you can stack them. You can roll the edges if you want, and you just put it in your clipboard. It will hold it. Where is my clipboard that I just made? Here it is. So you just take your pieces and you just slide it under there, and it's just gonna hold on to it. Now this one, just because it was packaging, I just stuck some to a piece of cardstock. So I just glued a piece of this to a piece of cardstock that I cut. But the idea for the clipboard was really multiple pages, just adding it. Okay, so that's the basic. Now you get the basic. Now let's get into the fun. Okay, the fun is that you can take this simple idea of a clipboard and it can become something. It could become an object or an element, or maybe something on a card or a junk journal or anything fun, including like something a little industrial where it looks like a legit board. This is done with exactly the same ingredients. We're like, well, no, this one looks like chipboard, but it's not chipboard. Oh, well, this one's got a little angled where you squeeze it, it's got a spring. No, it doesn't. It's all smoke and mirrors. But wait a minute, there's a photo. Yes, there is a photo because this fits Ideology Photo Booth. Something we love. I love photos. Always looking for interesting ways that you can use Photo Booth besides putting it into a frame. And so it really came into play when I was designing the scale of this clipboard, that I wanted something that would be small enough. If I made it big enough for Photomatic, it lost its cuteness. So I'm like, I'm good with Photo Booth because there are so many great photos. And this is actually the newest Photo Booth. We revised the whole cast last year in the new Photo Booths. There's a lot of tinted ones and all sorts of great things. But I wanted to kind of create more of an industrial one. And I'll talk through what I did, but same ingredients. So you're like, this is chipboard. Nope. This is simply taking 4 of these and gluing them together. And when you glue them together, it looks like chipboard. Oh, well, how did you get it all grunged and tattered? Because after it's glued together, you just drag it along the edge of a glass or any sharp edge, and not sharp like a knife, but just sharp. And all you do is just drag that when it was glued together, and you can go back and forth, and that's what's going to chew that up. See, these aren't even glued. But when it's together, you can see what it does. It actually creates that dented looking chipboard, which is great. But then it's the paper, because I wanted this photo booth to actually have like a really great vintage vibe. And this is for the vintage lovers. When you go to the thrift store, the flea market, wherever you go and buy vintage stuff, always look for things like this. Things that you would probably aren't pleasing to the eye on the outside, but all little pocket ledgers and journals have the best old paper. This is somebody's notebook that just wrote down all types of notes, and it is the best paper to die cut because it's just like that brand new pad that I had, but we're doing the same thing out of old pages. So this could be a dictionary if you want a dictionary writing. But anytime because these are often really cheap. That's why I said look for these, because they're aesthetically, they're nothing great, but it's the inside that has amazing, cool stuff that when you cut it up is perfect. Okay, so keep that in mind. Look for old books or old notebooks or old ledgers. Then you can just die cut some old pages. I just like the idea of rolling them up with my finger, at least on the corner. You can have them like offset. They don't have to be all stacked up. Then you have your little photo, and again, it could be tinted, it could be whatever you want, and then it just goes under that same clip, because the clip is just, it's just the clip, and it holds. I mean, that's what's wild, is you would think you have to put glue, or it holds. But now we're going to get into the other aesthetic of creating this. Okay, let's do that. So if these were glued together, because it doesn't matter if they were thick or thin, the aging process is exactly the same. I'm going to talk about how we create these aged effects on here to create this old clipboard. Okay, so I don't have to have these glued together to demo what I did on the top of this. You guys following me so far? I hope so. I'm talking a mile a minute because I love this so much. All right, I'm so excited. Okay, I'm going to use a tiny blending tool because I'm inking something tiny. The whole purpose of these tiny blending tools was for the world of Sizzix for me. These are Ranger tiny blending tools, but I love the ability to ink small things, and that's what I love about the tiny tools. And I have this in a mini distress tin. This is what the mini ink pads come in. These are the tools that I have. I've never had to have any additional ones. So I've got pink, red, orange, yellow, green, a light blue or teal, blue, purple. This is one I change out because this is kind of my light color, maybe antique linen, old paper. Then I've got browns, and then I have gray. That's what I have. And then I have extra foams just from the packaging if I ever want to use it. But I'm going for brown. That's what I've done here. The browns, well, use what you want. Use your ink of choice. I like a lot of different kind of browns, so maybe frayed burlap, a little vintage photo, walnut stain, scorched timber. Use whatever you want. I'm going to use a little bit of all of them. I'm going to start a little light. So I'm just going to rub that over frayed burlap, and I get what I get. I'm not going to go back into the ink pad. You get what you get. So this was stacked. I'm just going to go around the edge. See, tool stays in place. Fingers move. We're just creating something grungy. Don't overthink the ink. Next, vintage photo. Swipe. Go. Here we go. Circle, circle, circle. Circle, circle, circle. So far I've added frayed burlap and vintage photo, and already it's just taken on this, like, I don't know, moldy look. And you're not contaminating if you're just swiping in there. Next, we're gonna go walnut stain. So this time I'm just gonna go a little bit bigger because I want to get some color in there. I might focus a little on one spot, but the whole time I'm keeping my hand in the same area. This way my pressure doesn't change, and I'm just adding some ink. Finally, scorched timber. Scorched timber is, well, pretty much the name. It's going to look like this thing has been charred. And this is where I'm going to actually pick this up and go along the edges. So instead of circular, I want to kind of char up the edges. So I can drag it along. I can do a little swipe. I can focus on something. You know, I might want something a little bit more, you know, charred in the corner. But this is a dark color, but it provides just a great look, a great aesthetic. Now, again, this would have been the whole stacked thing. If you want something just to have a little bit more of a bruise, just lightly ziggity zag on the inside. So I'm not applying pressure. I'm just see if I can create that stain. All right, that's it for the ink. And then all we need to do is take a little water, because this is water reactive, and we're going to keep our distance, and we're going to slowly squeeze the trigger of the sprayer to get water droplets. We're not misting it. So we're just going to like add those little water drops. You'll see some could be bigger than others. You can focus some if you want. There we go. Let it sit for, I don't know, just a second or two. I'm looking for a paper towel. I don't have one. I'll use this. Oh, actually, can you grab me a paper towel real quick, Mario? See? He's like, oh, I'll get you. I got to go around the table. Paper towel is just easier just because it has the ability to absorb. So I'm going to take a paper towel, place it down, because I want to absorb the water that's on there. It doesn't really matter how long it sits. And then I'm going to dry it, because when you dry it, that's when everything comes to life. You'll see it. See, it's almost like it develops. See, that's where all those little water drips. And you could skip any of these steps. It doesn't really matter. But drying that water on craft, it just brings up these great little oil spots. So that's how the background part was done. This part, well, pretty easy. It's the same pieces. Right? It's the same stuff that we had as far as our little clip. Oh, got to get the glue again. That's always gonna freak my freak. But again, use whatever you want. If you use, you know, sticky, great. collage medium, doesn't really matter. But I like these pieces glued together before I age them. I'll show you why in a sec. Especially because it's just going to make it a little bit more like robust, okay? A little durable. There's that. There's that. So let me just glue these pieces together. So I'm gluing the skinny one on top of the other one, lining it up. Smear that off. Okay, so far so good. Collage medium. I'm just going to, see, I'm so not used to glue. I really don't know how anyone uses liquid glue on little die cuts. But I don't mind. For this one, like, I don't mind if I get little glue spots. That's going to be a bonus on this one. Okay, so there you go. Do they come in a tin? If not, may I suggest? You can suggest, but they won't come in a tin because you buy them in a 2-pack, but you could buy the tin by itself. So there you go. And I think that that's easier because not everybody is into the whole tin game. So it would just add to the cost of really the tool. But it's easy because really one tin, and let's see, what would you need? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So you need 6 packs of tools if you wanted to fill the tin. Then you have a bonus tool that doesn't really fit, which I'm going to share with you what I do with the bonus tool, because in the tin it fits 11. And I know a lot of people like, you know, stuff in kits and all that. It's just not really meant for a manufacturer. It's just, it makes the cost so high and not everybody really wants to store them this way. But you have 11 tools there. So that 12th tool, because if you were buying, and some retailers actually sell a bundle. You know, I've seen retailers where they have the tin with 6 2-packs of tiny tools. So then you make this. So I have seen that. But here's what I do with the bonus tool. If I can find it. Oh my gosh. Oh, Captain Obvious. There we go. Okay. So to create a grungy clip, I'm going to take my metallic craft stock and I'm going to sand it. Now you can use sandpaper, use whatever kind of sandpaper, but these are distress sanding discs, and these are discs that go on an ink tool. Okay, they have that same little fabric and they go on a blending tool. But because I'm doing die cuts, and I've already explained my obsession with the tiny tools and die cuts, my last tool is a tiny sander. So all I do is find a circle die. If you have this skew, this stack circle, this is what I use. And you're just going to die cut one of the sanding discs to get a smaller disc to fit the tool. Now you could just go in and freehand this with scissors, but it will not punch. It will not punch with a paper punch. You need a die. But I've just die cut, and now I have a tiny sander as my 12. So this never went to waste. It's just the perfect little sander for die cutting, because the surface area, it is significantly different. This is, you know, this is a mini blending tool before the tiny, and you're like, well, they've got to be pretty close in size. No. So if I'm trying to take this tool and go around this area, no way.
It's so big.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
that's the purpose of it. So how do you die cut it? Well, I'll show you, because there's a little tip to that too, because you might be like, well, is it going to ruin my die? Is it going to do this? All I did was take the smallest circle. This happens to be the stacked tile circles, but really any circle die. I think the measurement of this, I can measure it, but I don't really know. Let's see, what is it? It's 1 inch-ish. Yeah, pretty close. Pretty close. All I do is, because I don't want to put my die on the sandpaper part, I'm just going to put it on the fabric part, right? Because this is the fabric part of that tool. There's a sandpaper. I don't think it would damage the die, but I would just want to make sure that it doesn't for whatever reason. I don't want it to, you know, I don't know what that sandpaper is made of. I don't want to scratch it up. I got a lot of play in there that I can work, and I'm going to run that through.
Man,
And now I've got, yeah,
so cute.
I got the perfect little replacement disc for that. So there you have it. These last, I mean, seriously, for anyone that has this, if you're in the chat and you do it, I know when we first did the sandpaper, it was like, oh, come on, you know, you're just going to stick your name on anything. But it really is like, it is great sandpaper that just seems to last so long on a blending tool. It's crazy. Anyway, that's what I did on the mini sanding tool. I told you guys, I'm full of ideas. Not all good ones, but like Mario's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have this idea. I'm making tiny sandpaper. He's like, you need to step away. Okay, now I've got this. Now I'm just going to go in and sand the edges, because remember, this is printed. it's craft on the back. So this is a printed metallic, so it's going to grunge up beautifully. Then I'll take this and just create some little scratches on the top. Clipboards are often, you know, thrown around the workshop. I've got some scratches. So that little tool, see, it's actually going to put in good scratches that we're going to antique. What are we going to antique it with? Well, just what we did on the bulb. We're going to use black crayon. Could you use other things? I'm sure you could. You could try it with ink, distress, oxide, paint, whatever. But a black crayon, all I did was just add a couple of little smudges to the top. And then this is water reactive. So I'm just going to put a little bit of water on my mat, stick my finger in that water, and just move this around. I'll hold it close so you can just see. Like a little water on your finger. See how that just moves it around? And the crayon is like paint because it's just a pigment. And I think it's way more forgiving than paint. So just using my finger, I can just work it around in those areas and then just start revealing. So you take a clean finger and just start pulling off some of that color. Leave it built up in areas. It just creates the perfect look. And then when you're done, just clean your fingers off with water. The crayon really, it'll never stain your fingers. Okay. So now we have the little clip and the clipboard. Now I'm going to dry this. Crayon dries really, doesn't take long, but typically I'd be off doing something else, but I'm just going to dry it. Okay. There we go. Let's see, what was it? I love the thinness, the stacked tiles. Always amazed that they cut. I agree. Debbie Farinella. Hello, Debbie Farinella. This was a whole series that I did with Sizzix, and I don't know if it's even still available, but these dies, she was mentioning like how thin, where you think, how is this even cutting? Like how did something that thin, like even cut sandpaper? Here's why I did these, because traditionally in the die cut world, we all know about stacked dies, right? They've been doing them for years, where you have like a circle and it's a bazillion sizes, or an oval and it's a bazillion sizes. I did a whole series with Sizzix of these stacked tiles. I did them in circles, ovals, squares, rectangles, and I even think I did triangles, and I did hearts. The cool thing about this set is with those other nested sets, you get one of each shape, typically, not everybody, but typically. This you get 5 of the same shape. So it's nice that if I wanted 5 of those circles, like for a collage, I've got 5 dies to run it through one time. Or if I wanted to make a pattern, like on a card, I could lay a bunch of different dies, even the same size, on a card and create some different apertures, some different openings. I don't have to just do one of each. I can take whatever dies I wanted to put on there, like if I'm cutting this out, you know, like a cool little Swiss cheese design, I can lay that on my cutting pad and run it through, and now I get this cool negative space. Does that make sense? That's really why I did it, because I think a lot of people just look at it and go like, oh, I already have stacked. But the fact that you get multiples of all of them, and to Debbie's point, they're so thin, this way you could put them closer together. It was super nice. So I like that. And you can make frames and all sorts of stuff. I absolutely love it. Okay. Tamara said, please bring back Bundled Sage Crayon. Bundled Sage Crayon is coming back. It just sold out from Ranger. She was asking about Bundled Sage Crayon. It's the one that didn't come in any of the sets. So it is coming back. It just had to wait for the next reorder that Ranger was ordering crayons from the factory. So it will be coming back in. You just need to check whatever retailer if they have a waiting list or whatever. But it didn't go away. It's just when that one sold out, it just took a while for them to notice that it was gone, honestly, before they ordered it. So, okay. So now we've got our clipboard. It's as grungy as we want it to be. And if you don't like these age spots, you could go back and you can always ink back over them. So don't ever think that you can't do that. Okay. So how did we get this? This is actually pretty simple to do. When you see it, you're going to be like, well, that was dumb. Okay. You're going to take, well, you know, you're going to take these little guys. These are just adhesive squares, this right here. Dimensional adhesive squares. I like black. You can use whatever size you want. You can get them thick or thin. I love these. I get these from Simon because they have different thicknesses. So I'm using the thick one on here. I'm just going to use a square. Then I'm going to take the square, and I need to cut off just a little bit of it. Okay? Just using my scissors, just cut a little bit, because I want to make sure that my foam doesn't go on this edge. It goes right above the edge. So see, that's like the perfect little fit. Then I want to take the glue, and I want to put some glue along the bottom edge. You could use whatever glue. This could even be thin tape If you were an adhesive user, it could be thin tape, it doesn't matter. But you don't want foam on the whole thing because we need to create the ramp. So we're going to peel this off, and all you're going to do is you're going to line, because this is going to be here. So here's my tip for this. When you're building this, if you had this whole stack and you're ready to glue this on because there's liquid glue, my suggestion is to take a piece of scrap paper and put it under. So imagine if this was built, put this under this, and I leave this under here for the entire build. Here, there we go. So even when I'm gluing all these together, I do this to make sure that I never glue this tab. So when I'm stacking these together and I'm gluing them, I always have that piece of paper on the top layer, because otherwise, if you're using liquid glue and it spreads out, you're toast, because then you don't have a functioning clipboard. So leave that in there, even when we're adding the hardware. So now I'm going to add the hardware right to the edge of that. That's where my glue is. I need to do it on the table. Okay, so I put it right on the edge where my liquid glue is. I hold it, and then my tape just automatically will stick. You'll see what I mean. So I just need to hold that till the glue dries. Do-to-do. Do-to-do. Just holding. That's it. Do-to-do. Tappity tap. You know, don't you wish like it was just instant? Yeah, there you go. And now you have that angled clipboard clip that you'll want to like actually squeeze, and you can because it's squishy foam, you're not going to hurt it. But that's really how I made that. So it doesn't really bend on here, but it's clearly there. Isn't that fun? Just something fun and silly to do, whether that's just using your thin paper, and that goes under there, your photo. It's just weird because you want in the habit of like there's a spring, but it isn't. It all sits in there and it just holds in there. Here, let me put that photo up there. I like to have stuff a little on the wonky, can you tell? Especially on a clipboard. But yeah, it just holds it. No glue, no nothing. And then these are the thing that flew off the table earlier. And here they are. These are just called screw heads. They're from Ideology. They're flat backed, but they're just different screws. You glue them on. And they're 3 different sizes. So I just used the mini screw heads and glued them on. So, I mean, I know clipboards don't typically have hardware, but hey, this was industrial. So I wanted to add them just as an accent. You don't have to do that, of course, but that's just something else that you can do. But isn't that fun? Super easy way that you can make a clipboard. You can keep it clean and new, and you can use, here's our other one that we did. You can use your notebook paper, or you can grunge it up and use crayon and use that little foam and create a dimensional clipboard. So fun. Just crazy ideas, even down to like you never knew that you needed a little tiny sanding tool. But once you use it, I'm telling you, that tiny tool, it's for die cutting, it's a winner. It gets into every little area of a die cut. All right, I got one more idea to share with you, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. And this idea was inspired by my friend Zoe Hillman when she got the dies and she was talking about it. And I think she said she was making something. So Zoe, I'm not sure if you still are or you have, but like this idea was so good, like it's worth sharing. So a shout out to Zoe for thinking of this, because she got the dies and she was working on them, and you know, she's like, did you know that this was this? I'm like, I didn't know, but that's actually brilliant. Don't you love that when something goes together? So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the retro TV. Okay.
She said I've made something and I'm posting it after the live.
Whoop whoop! I can't wait to see yours. Okay. So a shout out to Zoe for this. So this is the set that I was talking about that had all these cool atomic elements, but it has this great little television. And this television is so cute. This is the TV. Like, how cute is it? Now someone asked, like, are you going to do a little dome or bubble? No. All I did was put a little Duralar in there, and that created the glass window. So I know it doesn't dome up, but hey, we know that Duralar is shapeable. So if you had it in there, you could heat the back and like push in and it would dome out. Yes, it would, because Duralar is heat stable. But that's the little television. This is the Zoe catch where she's like, did you know? She's like, did you know that this little TV complements this vault die set of this little matchbox pretty darn perfect? And I'm like, I would love to say that Jen and I had this on our radar. This is the vault that makes this little tiny sliding matchbox. Like, I'd like to say that it did, but it didn't. But if you have the matchbox and you want to cut a window out, so here I just actually used I used this die. So see this little cream die? I actually placed it down inside, because this is one of those opening dies again. I placed the rectangle in there, and so it cut out the window. It was close. I had to leave a little bit of the edge. I also put in a piece of Duralar, so this still slides open, but this actually works. I've got my sticky on the back, so I don't even have to glue this. I'm going to peel off. I've been waiting to do this for live. I wanted to assemble it so bad, and I'm like, nope, you better wait. So I got to peel off the back. Let me get the little sticky. Because this has this TV has so much detail, so I'm just going to peel off my little Xyron layer. And I'm going to square it up. I'm going to do this right, Zoe. Okay. And it just lines up perfectly, and you can have a little stand-up television. Okay, look at that. How cute is that?
That is come on.
It's come on. So this you can fill with little candies, but imagine at Christmas you can go in and build a little scene inside the drawer. You know, add a little tree, add some snow, add whatever, and then when you slide it in, come on, you have a little TV. Zoe, that's brilliant. So in order to get it to stand, you need a TV on the front and the back. So I'm going to share with you how I cut the back of this without cutting out the opening, but this gives you a little TV. Seriously. So yeah, if you didn't have that matchbook for that little matchbox TV, come on. Like Zoe, I want a million of these. I just love that. And I can only imagine, like, you know, little printed transparencies, your favorite cartoons, or like a Halloween one, you know, or maybe if you don't want to use Duralar, you can use the Ideology Shattered that has that little cracked open glass, like Zoe did Hitchcock with birds flying out. I just thought isn't that great? And I know Jen and I are like, man, but woo, we were close. Like it's just right there. It is so cute. Okay, let's talk about the back of this TV. And you don't have to do it this way. I'm sure, like I said, there's a million ways you could trace it. You can fussy cut it. You do you. But if you wanted to use this die, let me get rid of these Noteworthy dies. Hold on. Just going to clear these off because I don't want to confuse myself. I'm just going to set those over here. Thanks. I'm going to take out the die so you know what I'm talking about. When it comes to this die, there's a lot of pieces for the television. Okay, there's the actual base die for the TV, but this base die cuts the TV and it has a blade, so it's going to cut open that window. You saw when I held up the TV, like you can see through it. Then it has that panel. That's your panel that, you know, I'll build it the way it would. That'd be like your panel die. And then this is going to be, say, your monitor die. And then this is your like control panel die. And then this is your little feet die. So this die cuts the little legs or feet for the television. And then here you go. And this is the little dials. So when you do that, it's got the dials in the turn, and so there's a lot of dies to this to create this. And that's what's really fun, is it cuts little openings so you can stick in other pieces. There's also that little highlight die. That's just a little corner die. Could be used for a little boomerang, but it creates a little highlight, which is fun. Okie doke. So what do we do about this? Let's talk about it. Yeah, just the TV box. I mean, I can't even. This is only if you're going to do this. Do you even care about how do I use this and not cut out the window? Okay, where is the piece of paper that I had?
What are you looking for?
It was a piece of gray cardstock that I literally had here to cut the TV, but I can use something else. It was that gray from yesterday. We lost a piece of gray paper yesterday, and it's gone again. Yeah, but I'm not going to wait. Seriously. Did I give you a container or bowl for this? My word, you guys. If you could see the disastrous mark on this table. Do you guys see it on camera? I'm trying to oh, here it is. Gray. Okay. We look for it everywhere. Here we go. Move this. Yeah, I just saw someone say Barbie TV. So good. Yeah. And then I think, like, really, you can take, if you can take one of those little, you know, those lights from, I haven't tried it yet, so don't like quote me on it, but I know like Pear Blossom does like little lights. I wonder if you could, you know, somehow put one of those little press on lights where like maybe you press in the knob and like it lights up inside from Pear Blossom Press. That'd be really cute. I don't know, but ideas. There could be ideas going on here for the TV. Okay, here we go. TV die. If I go to cut this out, it's going to cut out the TV and it's going to cut out the opening. Here's how I'm going to cut out the back without cutting out the opening. I'm just going to use the machine. This could be done with any kind of die. It's just a simple little trick that I learned a bazillion years ago from Sizzix. Okay, can you guys see that? Am I too close? Okay. All we're going to do is you're going to place your die down. This works on any time you want to cut something that you want to like eliminate something. I want to cut out the shape, but I don't want to cut out the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a smaller cutting pad and I'm going to position it along where I want to cut. So I've got my cutting pad not overlapping that inside. It's just going along the edge. You guys with me? And I'm going to run it through. Okay. Now I'm going to take my cutting pad, the same little cutting pad, and now I'm going to put it on the other side. But again, the edge of the cutting pad is not touching or overlapping the edge of the opening of the monitor or the television or whatever we're going to call it. Okay. And we're just going to run it through. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to place this down again, not overlapping it. But I just want to make sure that my cutting pads go through the machine.
Die cutting guru.
And then you're just going to go to the other side and same thing. Whatever works. Just because the whole thing about cutting, it's all about pressure. And if you don't have pressure on a blade, it's not going to cut. Okay? Then you're just going to take and flip this over and it's going to cut out everything except the middle. But if I ran this through, which I will, I'll just cut another piece just so you guys see like, what? What did he do? If I just had the same die, it will not leave your screen. It will not leave your eyes. But I just cut it as it was designed, the whole deal. There we go. Just so you guys, you know, if you didn't understand, like, what is he even doing? Like, that makes no sense. That's really what it's going to cut out. So by going around, it just eliminated it cutting out the opening. And then all I need to do is, I don't want the antennas front and back. So I just took my scissors and I just cut off that little bump right there on the top. And there you go. That's the back part of the television. It's the back part of the console and it still has all of the stuff. So yeah, cute idea. Really fun. Zoe, thanks for sharing that. I can't wait to see your make on that, because just the idea of the Matchbox working with this is that's so much fun. So there you go. Hopefully you saw a lot of tips and tricks for using the Vault. There's some, gosh, I got to just pull these out. It's so fun, like when we just go through and like, yep. So this one, we shaped the pedals. I got to find all these Vault dies. Mario and I've been sloshing these around over here. This one, of course, we just did the TV. This one, we talked about the Edison bulb. This one, we did the clipboard and clip. And then the other one, that's the alphabet and edge. Oh, yeah, that's the one we opened. That's when we talked about the edges. So, yeah, a lot of ideas